Story 1. The last shift at Crossroads Mall. I need to tell someone about this. I quit my security job 3 days ago, and I still can't sleep without every light in my apartment turned on. My girlfriend thinks I'm losing it. Maybe I am, but I know what I saw at Crossroads Mall, and I know why I'm never going back. Let me back up. I'm 24, just finished community college, and like most people my age with a criminal justice degree and no real prospects, I ended up in security work. The pay was shit, but it was better than retail. And I figured it would look good on applications for actual police work down the line. The job posting was for overnight security at Crossroads Mall, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. The pay was weirdly good for a security gig, $22 an hour, which should have been my first red flag. Nobody pays that much for a guard at a dead mall. And Crossroads was dead. Like, morgue dead. The mall had closed 3 years earlier. Not suddenly, it was one of those slow, sad declines. First, the anchor stores left Macy's, then JCPenney. Then the smaller stores started folding. By the end, it was just a vape shop, a nail salon, and one of those sports memorabilia stores that definitely felt like a front for something. The mall officially shut down in 2021, supposedly for renovations. Except, no renovations ever happened. I met my supervisor, Derek, on my first day. He was maybe 50. With that exhausted look that career security guys get like they've seen some shit, but they're too tired to care anymore. We met in the parking lot at 9:30 p.m., right as the sun was finishing its descent behind the massive, dark structure of the mall. "You're gonna be on your own most nights," Derek told me, handing over a heavy flashlight and a ring with about 30 keys. "I do the training shifts, but after tonight, it's just you." I cover the Walmart distribution center across town. "Just me?" I asked. That seems like a lot of space for one person. The mall was huge, 2 floors, probably 1 million square feet. 4 anchor stores, dozens of smaller retail spaces, a food court, a movie theater. Derek shrugged. "Nobody's breaking into an empty mall, man. The company just needs someone here for insurance purposes. Walk the building once every 2 hours, check the doors, make sure no homeless people got in. That's it." He showed me the security office, a cramped room near the old food court, with a bank of monitors showing feeds from cameras throughout the mall. Most of the screens were dark. Derek explained that only about 1/3 of the cameras still worked. "Budget cuts," he said. "But again, man, nothing happens here. Easiest money you'll ever make. Bring a book, bring your laptop, just stay awake, and do your rounds." That first night was fine. Weird, but fine. There's something deeply unsettling about a dead mall. It's not like an abandoned building that's falling apart. Crossroads was still in decent shape. The lights worked. The escalators didn't run, but they were still there, frozen in place like mechanical fossils. Store gates were pulled down over empty retail spaces, but through the gaps, you could still see the remnants. Clothing racks, display shelves, posters advertising sales from 2021. The mannequins were the worst. Most stores had cleared out their inventory. But the anchor stores, the big department stores, had left everything. And that included dozens of mannequins. Macy's still had a whole section set up like it was ready for business. Mannequins wearing 3-year-old fashions. Some of them had fallen over, which somehow made it worse. They looked like bodies. I did my first round at midnight. The mall was silent, except for the sound of my footsteps on the tile and the occasional groan of the building settling. I walked the entire first floor, checking doors, shining my flashlight into dark store windows. Everything was secure. The second floor was more of the same. Empty stores, dead escalators, the weird, preserved-in-time feeling of it all. When I got to the old movie theater, I paused. The poster cases were still up, advertising movies from 2021, some superhero thing. A horror movie I vaguely remembered. The glass on the cases was dusty, and I could see my reflection, just a dark shape with a flashlight. For just a second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me in the reflection. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty corridor and the silent mall stretching out behind me. Jesus, I muttered to myself. Get it together. I finished the round and went back to the security office. The monitors flickered. The working cameras showed empty hallways, dark storefronts, the parking lot outside. I made myself a coffee from the ancient coffee maker Derek had shown me, pulled out my phone, and tried to relax. The next round was at 2 a.m. That's when things started to feel wrong. I started on the first floor again, same route. When I got to Macy's, I stopped. The mannequins in the front display, I could see them through the store gate, were in different positions. That's insane, right? I'd walked past this exact spot 2 hours earlier. The mannequins had been in a cluster, like they were at a party. 3 of them. Now they were in a line, facing the gate, facing out, facing where I was standing. My skin went cold. I stood there for probably 30 seconds, just staring at them. Their blank faces, their frozen postures. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd remembered wrong. Maybe I hadn't looked closely the first time. Maybe they'd always been in a line. But I knew they hadn't. I checked the gate, locked solid. No way anyone had gotten in there. I wrote it off as exhaustion. First night jitters, whatever. I kept moving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The second floor was worse. You know that feeling when you're in a space and your brain is screaming that something is wrong, but you can't figure out what? That's what hit me when I stepped off the frozen escalator onto the second floor landing. The overhead lights, those fluorescent panels that give everything that corporate hellscape glow, were flickering. Not all of them. Just the ones down the south corridor, where the food court was. Flicker, flicker, steady. Flicker, flicker, steady. I walked toward the food court, my flashlight beam cutting through the semi-darkness. The food stalls were still there. The counters, the menu boards, the tables and chairs. Someone had left a tray on one of the tables. A cup, a wrapper, like someone had just gotten up and walked away. I froze. That tray hadn't been there on my midnight round. I was sure of it. Hello? I called out. My voice echoed. Security. If someone's in here, you need to leave now. Nothing. Just the hum of the building and the flicker of the lights. I approached the tray. The cup was from one of the fast food places that used to be here. I could see the faded logo. I didn't touch it, but I leaned close. There was liquid in the cup. It looked fresh. My heart was hammering now. Someone was in here. They had to be. But how? Derek had checked all the doors with me at the start of the shift. Everything was locked. The mall had alarms on the emergency exits. If someone forced them open, they'd trigger. I grabbed my radio. Derek, you there? Static. Right. Derek wasn't on duty. I was alone. I was completely alone in this massive building. I did a sweep of the food court, checking behind counters, looking into the kitchen areas of the old restaurants. Nothing. No one. But that tray was there, and the cup was there, and I hadn't imagined them. I finished my round faster than I should have, practically jogging back to the security office. I reviewed the camera footage from the food court. The cameras that were working in that area showed nothing. Just empty space. The tray never appeared. No one walked through, but it was there. I'd seen it. I didn't do my 4 a.m. round. I'm not proud of that, but I'm being honest. I stayed in the security office, drinking bad coffee, watching the monitors, and trying to convince myself I was overtired. The footage showed nothing. Empty halls, still mannequins, dark stores. At one point, around 4:30, I was staring at the monitor showing the Macy's floor, the one with the mannequins. I watched for maybe 10 minutes straight, barely blinking, and then one of them moved. Not much, just a shift, like someone adjusting their weight. But mannequins don't have weight to adjust. They're plastic and foam. They don't move. I grabbed my flashlight and my radio, even though the radio was useless, and I went back down there. I had to see. I had to know if I was losing my mind. The walk from the security office to Macy's took maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Every shadow looked wrong. Every reflection in the store windows made me jump. The mall felt aware somehow, like it knew I was there, like it was watching. When I got to Macy's, the mannequins were gone. Not moved. Gone. The display area was empty. I actually laughed. It was this high, panicked sound that echoed through the empty mall. I was losing it. I had to be. Mannequins don't just disappear. I stood there gripping my flashlight trying to breathe, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Coming from deeper in the store, behind the gate, in the darkness beyond my flashlight's reach. I ran. I'm not ashamed. I ran back to the security office, locked the door, and I didn't move until 6 a.m. when Derek showed up for the shift change. "How was it?" he asked. "Fine," I lied. "Quite." He looked at me for a second too long, like he knew I was lying, like he'd heard that same lie from other guards before. But he didn't push it. I worked there for 6 more nights. Each night, something happened. A door I'd locked would be open on my next round. I'd hear music playing from the old Spencer's Gifts music, from a store that had no power. I found a set of wet footprints leading from the old fountain to one of the maintenance hallways, even though the fountain had been drained years ago. On my last night, I found the mannequins. All of them. Every single mannequin from every anchor store. They were arranged in the central atrium, under the big skylight. Dozens of them, standing in a circle. And in the center of the circle was my jacket, the one I'd left in the security office. I walked out. Didn't grab my things, didn't finish my shift. I just walked out the front entrance, set off the alarms, and kept walking. I called Derek the next morning and quit. He didn't sound surprised. "How long did you last?" he asked. 7 shifts. That's better than most. I drive past Crossroads sometimes. It's still there. Dark and massive and wrong. They're supposedly going to tear it down next year. Turn it into apartments or something. I hope they do. I really hope they do. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what's still walking those halls. I wonder if the mannequins are still there, standing in their circle, waiting for the next guard. And I wonder if anyone will last longer than 7 shifts. I need to start by saying that I've worked security for 8 years. I've done overnight shifts at hospitals, warehouses, construction sites, you name it. I'm not someone who scares easily. I've dealt with break-ins, medical emergencies, even found a dead body once in a parking garage. I can handle weird situations, but I can't explain what happened at the Meridian Tower, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. The Meridian Tower is a 15-story office building in the financial district downtown. Or at least, it's supposed to be 15 stories. It was built in 1987, back when our city actually thought it was going to become some kind of major business hub. That never happened. By the mid-2000s, most of the companies had moved out. By 2019, the building was completely empty. The property management company kept it maintained, though kept the utilities running, kept it heated and cooled, kept security on staff. I guess they were hoping to lease it out again eventually. That's where I came in. The job was simple. 4 nights a week, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I had the whole building to myself. My responsibilities were basic. Monitor the security cameras, do a walking patrol every 3 hours, make sure nobody broke in. The pay was decent, and honestly, it was the easiest gig I'd ever had. For the first 2 months, nothing happened. And I mean nothing. It was boring as hell. I'd sit in the ground floor security office, watch movies on my laptop, scroll through my phone. The building was quiet. Dead quiet. Just the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional ping of the elevator when the shafts contracted in the cold. The elevator, that's where it started. It was a Tuesday night in January, around 2 a.m. I was doing my first patrol of the shift. I always started at the top and worked my way down 15, 14, 13, all the way to the ground floor. Each floor was identical. Long hallways with offices on either side, a break room, bathrooms, emergency exits at both ends. The offices still had furniture in them, desks, chairs, filing cabinets. Some even had computers, though none of them worked anymore. It was like everyone had just walked out one day and never came back. I finished checking the 15th floor and headed to the elevators. There were 2 elevators in the building, side by side. I always used the one on the right. It was newer and faster. I pressed the down button and waited. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and pressed the button for 14. The doors closed. The elevator started moving, and then it stopped, not at 14. The display above the doors showed a number I'd never seen before. Said, not 13, not 3, just 3. The doors opened. I stood there, staring out at a floor I'd never seen before. It looked like all the other floors, same layout, same fluorescent lighting, same cheap commercial carpet. But something about it felt off. The air was different, warmer. There was a smell too, fresh coffee. I didn't get out. Not at first. I just stood there in the elevator, holding the door open with my hand, looking down the hallway. The lights were on. All of them. Every office door was closed. And I could hear something. A low hum. Not the HVAC system, this was different. It sounded like computers running. Dozens of them. Hello? I called out. My voice sounded flat, absorbed by the space. No response. I let the elevator doors close and pressed the button for 14 again. The elevator moved, the display changed 14, and the doors opened onto the floor I expected. Dark. Empty. Silent. I stood there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened. There was no third floor. The building went from ground floor to 2, then to 3. The numbering was standard. Ground, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 15. But the elevator had stopped at something called 3, and it had looked occupied. I finished my patrol, but I couldn't focus. When I got back to the security office, I pulled up the building plans on the computer. The property management company had left digital copies of everything: blueprints, maintenance records, tenant histories. According to the blueprints, the building had 15 floors. Ground floor, then floors 2 through 15. No third floor, no 3. But I'd seen it. I checked the elevator maintenance logs. Nothing unusual. The elevators were serviced regularly. No reported malfunctions. I told myself it was a glitch. Some weird numbering error in the elevator's programming. It happened, right? Technology screws up sometimes. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same situation. I was doing my patrol, starting from the top floor. I got in the elevator, pressed 14. The elevator stopped at 3. This time I got out. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe? Or some stupid sense that I needed to understand what was happening. I stepped out of the elevator into the hallway, and the doors closed behind me. The floor was identical to all the others, but it felt wrong. The air was warm, almost stuffy. The fluorescent lights buzzed, and that smelled coffee, but also something else. Cologne, maybe, or cleaning products. The smell of an office building during business hours. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. Every office door was closed. I tried the first one, locked. I tried the second one, also locked. The third door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. The office was fully furnished. A desk with a computer the screen was on, showing a login screen. A desk lamp. A filing cabinet. A potted plant that looked healthy, green, alive. There was a coffee mug on the desk. I walked over and touched it. It was warm. My heart was pounding now. Someone had been here. Recently. Maybe minutes ago. Hello? I called out again, louder this time. This is building security. If someone's here, you need to identify yourself. Nothing. I backed out of the office and continued down the hallway. I tried more doors. Some were locked. Some were open. Every open office looked the same, fully furnished, computers on, signs of recent activity. In one office, there was a half-eaten sandwich on the desk. In another, a jacket hung on the back of a chair. It was like I'd walked into the building on a normal workday. Except there were no people. I reached the end of the hallway and found the break room. The door was open. Inside, the lights were on. There was a coffee pot on the counter it was on. The pot, half full. I could see steam rising from it. I walked over and touched the pot. Hot. Freshly brewed. On the table, there was a newspaper. I picked it up. The date was from 1994. I dropped the newspaper. My hands were shaking. This didn't make sense. None of this made sense. The building had been empty since 2019. Before that, it had been declining for years. There was no way a floor could be actively occupied without me knowing. And there was definitely no way a newspaper from 1994 could be sitting here, looking like it had been printed yesterday. I needed to leave. I needed to get back to the elevator and get the hell off this floor. I turned around, and there was someone standing in the doorway. A man, middle-aged, wearing a suit and tie. He was holding a coffee mug and staring at me with this confused expression, like I was the one who didn't belong there. "Can I help you?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him. He tilted his head. "Are you lost? This is the Morrison and Associates floor. Do you have an appointment?" I'm building security, I managed to say. "The building is closed. You shouldn't be here." He frowned. "Closed? What are you talking about? It's Thursday. We're in the middle of the work week." He looked past me, at the break room, at the coffee pot, like everything was perfectly normal. "Listen," I said. "I don't know how you got in here, but you need to leave. Now." He gave me this strange look, not angry, just confused. "I work here," he said slowly, like he was talking to a child. "I've worked here for 6 years. Are you feeling okay?" I backed away from him, toward the hallway. He didn't follow. He just stood there, holding his coffee mug, watching me. I ran back down the hallway to where the elevators should be. I slammed my hand against the call button. The elevator dinged immediately, and the doors opened. I threw myself inside and pressed the button for the ground floor. The doors closed. The elevator descended. When I looked at the display, it showed 32G. The doors opened to the ground floor. The familiar, empty lobby. The security office with my laptop still sitting on the desk. The screensaver bouncing around. I didn't do any more patrols that night. I sat in the security office until 7 a.m. Door locked, watching the elevator through the window. When my shift ended, I went straight to the property management office. I told them I needed to see the building's history. Tenant records, specifically for a company called Morrison and Associates. The woman at the desk looked it up. Morrison and Associates had leased the third floor from 1987 to 1994. They were a financial consulting firm. They'd left the building in March of 1994. She paused, reading the screen. "After what?" I asked. "After one of their employees died in the building," she said. "Looks like it was a suicide. Someone jumped from the third floor break room window. I quit the next day. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. The thing that keeps me up at night. On my last shift, before I left, I checked the elevator one more time. I pressed the button for the third floor, the actual third floor. The one on the building plans. The elevator took me there. It was empty. Dark. Offices gutted. No furniture. No computers. No coffee pot. Just a hollow space that hadn't been occupied in years. So where the hell was I on that other floor? The floor marked 3? I don't work security anymore. I got a job in retail. Day shifts only. Fluorescent lights and customers and noise. Because I can't handle the quiet anymore. I can't handle spaces that feel like they're stuck in time. And I sure as hell can't handle elevators that go to floors that don't exist. The Meridian Tower is still there. Still empty. They're trying to lease it out again, I heard. Good luck to whoever takes that job. But if you ever find yourself in an elevator in an empty building, and it stops at a floor, you don't recognize a floor that feels wrong, don't get out. Just press a different button. Any button. And whatever you do, don't go looking for answers. Because some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some floors are better left unexplored. This one's going to be short. Not because it isn't terrifying, it is, but because I only worked at Lincoln Elementary for 3 nights before I couldn't take it anymore. Some places hold on to things, memories, trauma, whatever you want to call it. Lincoln Elementary was one of those places. The school had been closed for 5 years when I took the security job. It shut down in 2018 after enrollment dropped too low to justify keeping it open. The district consolidated with another elementary school across town, and Lincoln was just left there, empty, waiting for the city to decide what to do with it. I was 26 at the time, working for a contract security company that provided guards for vacant properties, schools, old hospitals, abandoned commercial buildings, anywhere that needed a warm body to make sure nobody broke in and trashed the place. The work was usually boring, which was fine by me. I'd bring a book, walk the building a couple times a night, and collect my paycheck. Lincoln Elementary should have been like all the others. It wasn't. The school was a 2-story brick building, probably built in the 1962nd. It had that institutional look, long hallways with lockers, classroom doors with those little windows, a gym that smelled like old sweat and floor polish, even though it had been empty for years. The cafeteria still had tables folded against the walls. The library still had books on the shelves, all of them coated in dust. My supervisor, Janet, met me there on my first night to show me the layout. Pretty standard setup, she said, handing me the keys. 2 floors. Main entrance here. Emergency exits at both ends and in the gym. Do a walkthrough every 2 hours. Office is in the main lobby, that's where you'll set up. Any issues I should know about? I asked. She hesitated. Just for a second. We've had some complaints from previous guards. Nothing serious. Just, old buildings make noise. Settling, pipes, that kind of thing. Don't let it get to you. What kind of complaints? Sounds, mostly. One guy said he heard footsteps. Another said she heard a kid laughing. But we've checked the whole building multiple times. There's nobody here. It's just your imagination playing tricks in the dark. The way she said it, that careful, measured tone, I knew she was lying. Or at least, not telling me the whole truth. Why did the previous guards quit? I asked. Janet looked at me. They didn't quit. We just moved them to other assignments. Look, if you want to turn down the job, that's fine. But it's easy money. Nothing's going to happen. I should have walked away right then. My first night was uneventful. I set up in the main office, a small room just off the lobby with a desk and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. The building was cold, even though the heat was supposedly still running. That institutional cold that seeps into your bones. I did my first walkthrough at midnight. The school was exactly what you'd expect. Empty classrooms with desks still arranged in rows. Chalkboards with faded writing. Bulletin boards with construction paper decorations that were peeling off the walls. The kindergarten classrooms were the saddest. Little chairs, cubbies with name tags still on them. A reading corner with a rug that had the alphabet printed on it. The second floor was the same. More classrooms. The art room with dried out paint bottles. The music room with a piano that was missing half its keys. And then there was room 302. I don't know why I noticed it specifically. It looked like every other classroom desks. Chairs. A teacher's desk at the front. Windows overlooking the playground. but something about it felt times-heavy asterisk, like the air was thicker in that room, like something was pressing down on me. I stood in the doorway for a moment, shining my flashlight around. Everything looked normal. I almost moved on, but then I saw the drawings. They were taped to the walls, half hidden behind where the bulletin boards had been removed. Children's drawings, crayon and marker. The kind of stuff every elementary school classroom has, except these were all the same subject. A girl. A little girl with long dark hair and a red dress, in every single drawing. Some showed her smiling, some showed her crying. And in one, a drawing near the window she was falling. I stepped closer to look at that one. The detail was crude, the way kids draw, but the intent was clear. A stick figure girl with dark hair, tumbling down from the top of the page. At the bottom, someone had written in blocky letters, "Sarah fell." A chill ran down my spine. I backed out of the room and closed the door. When I got back to the office, I looked up Lincoln Elementary online. It took me about 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. In March of 2017, a third grade student named Sarah Mitchell had died at the school. She'd fallen from a second-story window in room 302. The report said it was an accident. She'd been leaning against the window during class, and it had given way. The window had failed a safety inspection just months before, but the school hadn't had the budget to replace it. Sarah was 8 years old. I felt sick. That room specific times room, was where a little girl had died, and I was supposed to walk past it every night. Pretend like nothing was wrong. Like the space wasn't haunted by something terrible. I didn't sleep that day. When I came back from my second shift, I was exhausted and on edge. The night started normally. I did my first walkthrough at midnight, same as before. I avoided looking into room 302. Just walked past quickly, eyes forward. But when I reached the end of the hallway, I heard something. Footsteps, small footsteps, like a child running. They came from behind me, from the direction of room 302. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The hallway was empty. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the lockers. "Is someone there?" Nothing. I stood there for what felt like forever, listening. The building was silent, except for the hum of the heating system and the rain starting to tap against the windows outside. I told myself it was pipes, or the building settling, or my exhausted brain playing tricks on me. I finished my walkthrough and went back to the office. At 2:47 a.m., I heard them again. This time, I was sitting at the desk, half asleep, when the sound jolted me awake. Footsteps. Running. On the second floor. Directly above me. Small feet, moving fast. The sound of a child running down a hallway, and then laughter. High-pitched. Joyful. The sound of a little girl playing. I grabbed my flashlight and ran upstairs. My heart was hammering. Part of me thought maybe a kid had broken in, some local teenager pulling a prank, or a homeless person who'd found a way inside. I was ready to confront them. Ready to call the police, if I needed to. But when I got to the second floor, there was nobody there. The hallway was empty. Every classroom door was closed, exactly as I'd left them, except for room 302. That door was open. I approached slowly. The door was wide open, swaying slightly, like someone had just run through it. I shined my flashlight inside. The room looked the same as before. Desks, chairs, the drawings on the walls. Except now there was something on the teacher's desk that hadn't been there before. A small red shoe. I didn't touch it. I didn't go into the room. I just stood there in the doorway, staring at it. It was a child's shoe, red with a Velcro strap, scuffed and worn like it had been played in, like it had been loved. I backed away from the door. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and called Janet. "There's someone in the building," I said when she answered. Or something. I don't know. But I heard footsteps. And "It's just the building," Janet said, cutting me off. She sounded tired, unsurprised. Old schools make noise. You're not the first person to... There's a Times shoe Times on the desk in room 302, I said. A child's shoe. It wasn't there an hour ago. Silence on the other end of the line. Janet? Don't go in that room, she said finally. Just finish your shift. Stay in the office. I'll have someone come check the building in the morning. What happened here? I asked. I know about Sarah Mitchell. I know a girl died in that room. But there's something else, isn't there? Another long silence. Sarah died during school hours, Janet said quietly. But before that, there were complaints. From teachers, from custodians. People said they heard a girl crying at night. They said they saw someone in the window of room 302 after everyone had gone home. The school brought in people to investigate. They found nothing. But you believe them, I said. It doesn't matter what I believe, Janet said. Just finish your shift. She hung up. I didn't finish my shift. I went back upstairs one more time at exactly 2:47 a.m. I checked my watch and I stood outside room 302. The footsteps came again, running from inside the room. And then, clear as day, I heard a voice. A little girl's voice. Help me. 2 words. Quiet, desperate. I opened the door. The room was empty. The shoe was gone from the desk. But the window that Sarah Mitchell had fallen from was open. It shouldn't have been. It was sealed. I'd checked it myself on my first walkthrough. The frame was warped, the latch broken, but it was stuck shut. Now it was open, wide open. The rain was coming in, soaking the floor. I closed the window, locked it as best I could, and I left. I called Janet from my car and quit. She didn't argue. The school is still there. They're supposedly turning it into condos, but the construction keeps getting delayed. Something about structural issues. Or maybe nobody wants to work in a building where they hear footsteps at 2:47 a.m. I don't know if Sarah Mitchell is still there. I don't know if what I heard was really her, or just the building holding on to the memory of what happened. But I know I heard footsteps, and I know I heard her voice, and I know that some places don't let go of their dead. Room 302 is still on the 2nd floor. The window is still there. And every night, at 2:47 a.m., somewhere in that empty school, a little girl is still running, still playing, still falling, and nobody can help her. That was Sarah's story. Next, we have something different. Something that lasted much longer. If you thought a single night was terrifying, imagine encountering the same impossible person every shift for 3 weeks straight. This next story is our longest tonight, and for good reason. Because sometimes, the horror doesn't come all at once. Sometimes, it builds. Slowly. Deliberately. Until you can't escape it anymore. Asterisk? I'm going to tell you about Gerald. That's not his real name. I don't know his real name. But that's what I called him in my head. And eventually, that's what I started calling him out loud. To his face. Right before everything went to hell. This story takes 3 weeks to tell. 3 weeks of overnight shifts at Westfield Galleria, a dying mall on the edge of town. 3 weeks of seeing something that couldn't exist. 3 weeks of watching a nightmare slowly walk toward me, night after night, getting closer and closer until I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Marcus. I'm 29 years old. I've worked security for 6 years. Mostly retail and commercial properties. The Westfield job came up in October of last year. The mall was struggling, half the stores had closed, foot traffic was down, and management had cut the security staff from 3 guards per shift to just 1. Me. The hours were 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Sunday through Thursday. The pay was decent, and the job seemed straightforward. Lock up after the last stores closed. Do regular patrols. Make sure nobody broke in overnight. Standard stuff. The mall itself was depressing. It had been built in the early 2000s during the retail boom. But by 2023, it was a corpse. The anchor stores were gone. Sears, JCPenney, Macy's all empty. The food court had maybe 3 restaurants still operating. Most of the smaller retail spaces were vacant, their windows papered over or gated shut. But some stores were still open. A Victoria's Secret, a GameStop, a couple of clothing stores. They'd limp through the day with maybe a dozen customers total, then close up at 9 p.m. By the time I showed up at 10, the mall was a ghost town. I met Gerald on my 4th shift. It was a Wednesday night, around 1:30 a.m. I was doing my 2nd patrol of the evening, walking the main corridor on the 1st floor. The mall had 2 levels, connected by escalators and an elevator near the center atrium. My routine was simple: start at one end, walk the entire 1st floor, take the escalator up, walk the 2nd floor, come back down. Check all the doors, make sure everything was secure. Takes about 45 minutes. I was passing the old Sears. The entrance was blocked off with construction barriers and plywood when I saw him. An old man, maybe 70, 75 years old. Thin, wearing khaki pants, a tucked-in polo shirt, and white sneakers. He had gray hair, neatly combed, and he was walking. Just walking down the corridor, hands clasped behind his back, like he was taking a morning stroll. At 1:30 inches the morning, in a closed mall. "Hey," I called out. "Sir, excuse me." He didn't stop, didn't even turn around, just kept walking, his pace steady and unhurried. I jogged to catch up to him. "Sir, the mall is closed. You can't be in here. How did you get in?" He stopped walking. Slowly, he turned to face me. His face was normal. That's the thing. I expected something wrong, something off, but he looked like any other elderly man. Wrinkled skin, watery blue eyes, a slight smile, grandfatherly. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said. His voice was soft, friendly. "I didn't realize I was causing any trouble. I'm just taking my evening walk." "Your evening walk?" I repeated. "Sir, it's 1:30 inches the morning. The mall closed at 9. How did you get in here?" He tilted his head slightly. "Through the door, I imagine. I always walk here, every evening. It's good exercise." I looked past him, down the corridor. Both sets of entrance doors were locked. I'd checked them myself at 10 p.m. The emergency exits would have triggered alarms if he'd used those. There was no way he could have gotten in. "I'm going to need to see some ID," I said. "And then I'm going to have to escort you out." "Of course," he said agreeably. He reached into his pocket and pulled out nothing. His hand came out empty. He looked at it, confused. "I seem to have forgotten my wallet," he said. "How silly of me." "What's your name?" I asked. "Gerald," he said without hesitation. "Gerald Finch. I live over on Maple Street. Number 412. I pulled out my radio. "Sir, I'm going to call the police. They'll help us figure out how you got in here and get you home safely." "Oh, that won't be necessary," Gerald said. He smiled again. "I know the way out. I'll just finish my walk first." And he turned and started walking again. "Sir, stop," I said, following him. "You can't just..." He kept walking. Not fast, but with that same steady, unhurried pace. I reached out to grab his arm, to stop him. My hand went through him. Not literally, not like he was a ghost. But it was like he wasn't entirely solid. Like my hand couldn't quite make contact. Like there was a barrier between us that I couldn't see. I pulled my hand back, staring at it. Gerald kept walking. I followed him at a distance, my heart pounding, as he made his way down the corridor. He walked past the empty stores, past the food court, past the fountain that had been drained years ago. He walked the same route I always walked during my patrols. When he reached the escalators at the center atrium, he stopped. He turned to look at me. That same grandfatherly smile. "See you tomorrow evening, Marcus," he said. And then he walked onto the down escalator, which wasn't running, and descended to the lower level. I ran to the escalator and looked down. He was gone. Just gone. The lower level was empty. I hadn't told him my name. I spent the rest of that shift checking every door, every window, every possible entry point. Everything was locked, secure. There was no way someone could have gotten in. I reviewed the security camera footage. The cameras covered most of the mall, though there were dead zones where older cameras had stopped working and never been replaced. I found Gerald on the footage, or at least, I found something. The video showed a figure walking through the mall. But it was wrong. The image flickered. Sometimes he was there, clear as day. Sometimes he was translucent. Sometimes he wasn't there at all. But I could see the camera angle shift slightly, like something was passing in front of it. The timestamp on the footage matched when I'd seen him. 1:31 a.m. to 1:47 a.m. 16 minutes of Gerald walking through the mall. And then, at 1:47 a.m., he vanished. Right in the middle of the lower level, near the old arcade. One frame he was there, the next frame he wasn't. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? My supervisor? Hey, I saw a ghost in the mall. I'd be fired. Or sent for a psych eval. I convinced myself it was a glitch. A camera malfunction. Maybe I'd been more tired than I thought. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But 2 nights later, he came back. Same time. 1:30 a.m. I was in the food court when I heard footsteps echoing through the empty mall. I turned around. Gerald was standing at the entrance to the food court. Same khaki pants, same polo shirt, same white sneakers, same smile. "Good evening, Marcus," he said. "You're not real," I said. My voice was shaking. "You can't be real." "Of course I'm real," Gerald said, sounding genuinely confused. "I'm standing right here. We talked just the other night, remember? How did you know my name?" I demanded. He tilted his head. "You told me. Don't you remember?" I hadn't. I definitely hadn't. "You need to leave," I said. "I don't know what you are, but you can't be here." "I'm just taking my walk," Gerald said. "I've been walking here for years. Every evening, 1:30 a.m. It's part of my routine. The mall hasn't been open at 1:30 a.m. for times years asterisk," I said. Gerald smiled. "I know." He started walking again. Same route as before. Down the main corridor, past the stores. Toward the escalators. I followed him. But this time I didn't try to touch him. I just watched. He walked his loop first floor, up the escalator, second floor, back down exactly the same as before. It took him 16 minutes. When he reached the lower level near the old arcade, he stopped. He turned to face me. But this time, his expression was different. Less friendly. More knowing. "You've been having trouble sleeping, haven't you, Marcus?" he said. My blood went cold. "What?" "The nightmares," Gerald said. "The ones about the car accident. The one where you couldn't save her." I took a step back. "How do you blame yourself," he continued, his voice calm and conversational. "You think if you'd been driving just a little faster, or a little slower, the timing would have been different. That truck wouldn't have run the red light. Your sister would still be alive." "Shut up," I said. My hands were shaking. "Shut the fuck up. I'm not judging you, Marcus," Gerald said. "I'm just observing. That's what I do. I walk and I observe." "Who are you?" I whispered. Gerald smiled. And for the first time, the smile didn't look grandfatherly. It looked times wrong asterisk. "I already told you," he said. "I'm Gerald, and I'll see you tomorrow evening." He turned and walked into the shadows near the arcade. I ran after him, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He was gone. That's when I started researching. The next day, I called the number for Maple Street. I asked if there was anyone named Gerald Finch at 412 Maple Street. There wasn't. There had never been anyone by that name at that address. I searched online for Gerald Finch in Westfield Galleria. Nothing. I searched for deaths at the mall, missing persons, anything that might explain what I was seeing. I found something. In 2003, a man named Gerald Pritchard had died in the mall. Heart attack. He was a mall walker, one of those elderly people who come to the mall early in the morning to walk laps for exercise. The article said he'd been walking at Westfield every morning for 5 years. He collapsed near the arcade on the lower level. By the time paramedics arrived, he was dead. The article included a photo. It was him. Same face, same thin frame, same white sneakers. Gerald Pritchard had been dead for 20 years. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that every night he came back. And every night he knew something new about me. Night 3. Your mother still calls every Sunday, but you don't always answer. You feel guilty about that. Night 4. You've been thinking about that job offer in Denver. The one you turned down because you were afraid of starting over. Night 5. You still have her bracelet. The one she was wearing when she died. You keep it in your glove compartment. Every night, 1:30 a.m., Gerald would appear. He'd walk his loop. 16 minutes. And each time, he'd tell me something about myself. Something private. Something I'd never told anyone. I stopped trying to interact with him. I just watched from a distance as he made his rounds, but he kept getting closer. At first, he'd be on the far side of the mall when he appeared. Then he started appearing closer to wherever I was. By the second week, he was appearing within sight of me, and he started talking more. Do you ever wonder what happens after we die, Marcus? Do you think she forgave you? Your sister? This mall used to be full of life. Now it's just empty. Like you. By the third week, I was barely sleeping. I'd show up to my shifts exhausted, dreading 1:30 a.m. I thought about quitting. I should have quit, but some sick part of me needed to know what Gerald wanted. Why he was there. Why he was targeting times me asterisk. On the 19th night, something changed. Gerald appeared at 1:30 a.m., like always. But this time, he didn't walk his usual route. He walked directly toward me. I was standing near the security office on the first floor. He came down the main corridor, his eyes locked on mine, that terrible smile on his face. "Hello, Marcus," he said, stopping about 10 feet away from me. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice came out as a whisper. "I want you to understand," Gerald said. "Understand what?" "That you're not alone here." "What does that mean?" I asked. Gerald gestured around at the empty mall. "This place. It holds on to things. Memories. Regrets. The people who walked here. Who worked here. Who times died, times here. We don't leave. We can't leave." "We?" I repeated. Gerald smiled. "Look around, Marcus." I turned slowly. They were everywhere. People. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Standing in the corridors, in the empty stores, on the second floor looking down at me. Some were old. Some were young. Some were wearing modern clothes. Some were wearing styles from decades ago. All of them were staring at me. "They've been here the whole time?" Gerald said softly. "You just couldn't see them. But now you can. Because you've been here long enough. Because you've walked these halls enough times. Because you're starting to become like us." "No," I said, backing away. "No, I'm alive. I'm not yet," Gerald said. "But you're getting closer. Every night you come here, every hour you spend in this empty place, you're tying yourself to it. Soon, you won't be able to leave either. And that's what you want, isn't it, Marcus?" Gerald continued. "Deep down, you want to disappear. You want to stop feeling guilty. You want to stop time's existing asterisk. This place will give you that. You can walk these halls forever, like me. No pain, no guilt, no memory of what you've lost." He took a step closer. "All you have to do is stay." I ran. I ran out of that mall faster than I've ever run in my life. I didn't grab my jacket, didn't clock out, didn't lock the doors behind me. I just ran to my car and drove. I called my supervisor from a gas station 20 miles away and quit. She didn't ask questions. I think she'd heard some version of this story before. I moved to Denver 3 weeks later. Took that job I'd been too afraid to accept. Started therapy. Started actually answering when my mom calls. I don't work security anymore. I don't work nights anymore. And I never, ever times go to malls. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at 1:30 a.m., unable to sleep, I think about Gerald. I think about all those people standing in the corridors, trapped in that dying mall, walking their loops forever. And I wonder how many of them used to be security guards. How many of them thought they were just doing a job? How many of them stayed too long? Westfield Galleria is still there, still dying. They're talking about tearing it down, but it never happens. Something always delays the demolition. I looked it up last month. They've gone through 11 security guards in the past year. None of them last more than a month. If you ever take a security job at an empty mall, and you see an old man walking the corridors at 1:30 a.m., wearing khaki pants and white sneakers, don't talk to him, don't follow him, and for God's sake, don't stay long enough to learn his name. Because once you know his name, he knows yours. And once he knows your name, he'll never let you leave. I still have nightmares about Gerald, about his smile, about the way he said my name, but at least I got out. Not everyone does. Gerald's story reminds us that some places hold on to their dead. But what happens when technology captures something it shouldn't? When the cameras see things we can't? Our next story comes from a security guard who learned that sometimes the most terrifying thing you can see is yourself. Asterisk. I need to tell you about the night I watched myself do something I never did. My name is Alex. I'm 31 years old, and until 6 months ago, I worked overnight security at the Reichert building, a 12-story office complex downtown that's been mostly vacant for about 3 years. Standard overnight gig. Monitor the cameras, do patrols, make sure the building stays secure. The security office was in the basement, next to the parking garage. It was a small room, maybe 10 by 12 feet, with a desk, a mini fridge, and a wall of monitors showing feeds from 42 cameras throughout the building. 42 cameras. I knew every single one of them. Camera 1. Main lobby entrance. Camera 2. Elevator bank. Ground floor. Camera 3 through 8. Stairwells. Camera 9 through 12. Parking garage levels. And so on. Camera 14 covered the 7th floor hallway. East wing. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me explain how this started. The Reichert building had a problem with its security system. The cameras were old, installed probably 15 years ago, and the recording software was glitchy. Footage would skip sometimes. Timestamps would jump. Occasionally, a camera would just show static for a few minutes before coming back online. My supervisor, Tom, had warned me about it on my first day. If you see anything weird on the monitors, just make a note of it, he'd said. The cameras are shit, but corporate won't pay to upgrade them until something actually breaks. So, we deal with it. For the first 2 months, the glitches were annoying but harmless. A camera would flicker. The feed would freeze for a second. Nothing major. Then, in December, I started reviewing footage. Part of my job was to watch the previous night's recordings. Every shift 8 hours of footage from all 42 cameras, played back at 8x speed. I'd scan through, looking for anything unusual. Break-ins, vandalism, equipment malfunctions. Most nights, there was nothing, just empty hallways and dark offices. But on December 18th, I saw something on camera 14. A figure, walking down the 7th floor hallway at 2:47 a.m. At first, I thought it was just someone who'd stayed late. Except, the building had been completely empty. The night before I'd checked, I'd been the only person there. I rewound the footage and played it again at normal speed. The figure was wearing dark pants and a security uniform shirt. It was wearing My Time's uniform. I leaned closer to the monitor, my heart starting to race. The camera angle wasn't great. Camera 14 was mounted at the end of the hallway, looking down the corridor, but I could see enough. The build was right. The height was right. The way the figure walked, hands clasped behind its back, was exactly how I walked during patrols. It looked like me, but I hadn't been on the 7th floor at 2:47 a.m. the previous night. I'd been in the security office, watching a movie on my laptop. I remembered it clearly. I'd been watching the thing. And I'd paused it around 2:30 to make coffee. I hadn't left the office until my 3 a.m. patrol. I checked the other cameras from that time period. Camera 1 showed the lobby empty. Camera 2 showed the elevator bank empty. The stairwell cameras showed nothing. But camera 14 showed me, or something that looked like me, walking down the 7th floor hallway. I watched the figure reach the end of the hallway and stop in front of office 714. It stood there for a moment, facing the door, and then it turned and looked directly at the camera. I'm not exaggerating when I say that was the most terrifying moment of my life up to that point, because the face wasn't quite times right. It looked like me. Same features, same bone structure, but the expression was wrong. Too neutral, too blank, like someone wearing a mask of my face. The figure stared at the camera for exactly 5 seconds. I counted, and then it turned and walked out of frame. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what I'd seen. I told myself it was a glitch. The footage had to be corrupted. Maybe it was pulling up old recordings from a different night, when had times been on the 7th floor. But the timestamp was correct. December 17th, 2:47 a.m. And I knew I hadn't been there. I didn't tell Tom about it. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I saw myself on the security footage, but it wasn't me? He'd think I was insane. I tried to forget about it. I told myself it was a one-time thing. A weird technical error. 3 days later, it happened again. Same camera. Same time. 2:47 a.m. I was watching the live feed this time, not reviewing old footage. I was sitting in the security office, monitoring all 42 screens, when I saw movement on camera 14. A figure entered the frame. Me. I stood up so fast I knocked my coffee over. The liquid spread across the desk, but I barely noticed. My eyes were locked on the monitor. The figure, my doppelganger, my double, whatever the hell it was, walked down the 7th floor hallway with that same measured pace. Same posture, same uniform. I grabbed my radio with shaking hands and switched it to the building-wide channel. "This is security," I said, my voice cracking. "If there's anyone on the 7th floor, identify yourself immediately." Static. I watched the figure on the screen. It didn't react to my radio call. It just kept walking. When it reached office 714, it stopped, turned toward the camera, and smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a human smile. A smile that was too wide, too knowing. Like it was aware I was watching. Like it wanted me to be watching. I ran. I left the security office, left the monitors, left the footage still recording, and I took the stairs up to the 7th floor. My heart was hammering. My hands were slick with sweat. The stairwell door opened onto the 7th floor hallway with a loud click. The hallway was empty, silent. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I walked toward office 714. When I reached it, I tried the door. Locked. I pulled out my keys. I had master keys to every office in the building and unlocked it. The office was dark, empty. Just a desk, a chair, some filing cabinets. Dusty, unused. The same as every other vacant office in the building. I checked the other offices on the floor, all empty. I went back downstairs to the security office and reviewed the footage from camera 14. The figure was gone. The hallway was empty, had been empty, like nothing had happened, but I'd seen it. I'd watched it in real time. That's when I started noticing the pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, it happened 6 more times. Always camera 14. Always 2:47 a.m. Always the same routine. The figure would walk down the hallway. Stop at office 714. Look at the camera and disappear. But the figure started doing things I hadn't seen it do before. On December 28th, I watched it try the door handle of office 714. The door opened, even though I knew it was locked. The figure went inside. The camera angle didn't show the interior, but I could see the light from the office spilling into the hallway. 3 minutes later, the figure came back out. It was carrying something. A file folder. Dark red, the kind with a string clasp. On January 2nd, the figure appeared again. Same routine. But this time, when it looked at the camera, it held up the red folder, like it was showing it to me, taunting me. I went upstairs immediately to check. Office 714 was locked, as always. I searched the entire office, the desk, the cabinets, every drawer. There was no red folder. On January 5th, I watched the figure open the folder on camera. It pulled out what looked like photographs and spread them on the hallway floor, just out of clear view. I couldn't see what the photos showed. The figure knelt down, studying them. Then it gathered them up, put them back in the folder, and walked out of frame. When I got upstairs, there was nothing on the floor. No folder, no photos, no evidence anyone had been there. I started to lose it. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd lie awake during the day, thinking about the figure, about my own face looking back at me from the monitor, about what it was doing up there at 2:47 a.m. every night. On January 9th, something changed. I was in the security office, watching the monitors. It was 2:45 a.m. I had camera 14 pulled up on the main display, waiting. At 2:47 a.m. exactly, the figure appeared. But this time, it wasn't alone. There was someone else in the hallway. A woman. She was wearing office attire, a blouse and skirt, heels. Her back was to the camera, but I could see she had dark hair pulled into a ponytail. The figure, my double, approached her. They seemed to be talking, though there was no audio on the cameras. The woman turned around. I couldn't see her face clearly, but something about her posture changed. She went rigid, afraid. My double reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. She tried to pull away. Whatever it was, grabbed her arm. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I could only watch as my double dragged the woman toward office 714. She was struggling, trying to break free. They disappeared into the office. The door closed behind them. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Neither of them came back out. I grabbed my radio, my keys, my flashlight. I ran upstairs faster than I'd ever moved in my life. When I burst through the stairwell door onto the 7th floor, the hallway was empty. I ran to office 714. The door was closed. Locked. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. Finally, the door opened. The office was empty. No woman, no red folder, no photographs. Just an empty office with dusty furniture and the smell of stale air. I searched every inch of that room. The desk, the cabinets, behind the furniture, under the carpet. Nothing. I checked the other offices on the floor. All locked, all empty. When I got back to the security office, I pulled up the footage from camera 14. The hallway was empty. Had been empty. There was no figure, no woman. No evidence of what I just watched, but I knew times what I'd seen. I quit the next day. I called Tom and told him I was done. He didn't ask why. I think he could hear something in my voice that told him not to push it. I spent the next week trying to find information about Office 714, about the building's history, about anything that might explain what I'd seen. I found an article in the local newspaper archives from 2008. A woman named Claire Mendoza had disappeared from the Reichert building. She worked on the 7th floor, Office 714. She'd stayed late one night to finish a project. Security footage showed her leaving her office at 2:43 a.m. and heading toward the elevator bank. She was never seen again. The case was never solved. I don't know what I was seeing on camera 14. I don't know if it was a ghost, or a recording, or some kind of temporal loop, or something else entirely. But I know what that figure was doing. It was showing me what happened to Claire Mendoza. It was showing me what Times at Times did to her. And it was wearing my face. The Reichert building is still there. Still mostly empty. They still need overnight security. I heard they've gone through 4 guards since I left. None of them last more than a month. I wonder if they've seen camera 14. I wonder if they've seen themselves walking that hallway at 2:47 a.m. I wonder if they've seen the woman. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Office 714. About what might be hidden there. About what happened to Claire Mendoza. About whether she's still there somehow. Trapped in that office. Waiting for someone to find her. But I'm never going back. Because I saw what I did to her. Or what something wearing my face did to her. And I don't want to know which one is real. If you ever work security in an empty building, and you see yourself on the monitors doing things you don't remember doing, turn off the cameras, walk away, and whatever you do, don't go looking for answers. Because some footage isn't meant to be reviewed, and some versions of yourself are better left unwatched. Asterisk. Identity is a fragile thing, isn't it? We think we know ourselves. We think we're in control of our own actions. But what happens when that certainty is stripped away? Our next story takes us underground, literally to a parking garage, where the laws of physics and reality itself seem to break down. And the deeper you go, the worse it gets. Asterisk. There are some places where geometry stops making sense, where the rules that govern our physical world just break down. The parking garage beneath the Hartwell Office Park is one of those places. My name is Jesse. I'm 27, and I worked overnight security there for exactly 8 weeks before I couldn't take it anymore. The Hartwell Office Park was built in the late 90s, 3 interconnected office towers, sharing a massive underground parking structure. According to the blueprints, the garage had 6 basement levels, B1 through B6. Each level could hold about 200 cars. By 2024, the office park was maybe 30% occupied. Most of the parking spaces sat empty. The deeper levels were completely abandoned. Nobody parked down there anymore. Too dark. Too isolated. The elevators to the lower levels barely worked. My job was simple. Patrol the buildings in the garage. Make sure everything was secure. Respond to any alarms. The garage was the worst part of the job. 6 levels of concrete and shadows. The air thick with the smell of exhaust and dampness, even though hardly anyone parked there anymore. But it was just 6 levels. That's what I kept telling myself. Just 6 levels. The elevator to the parking garage was in Tower B, just off the main lobby. It was an old freight elevator, big enough to fit maybe 10 people, or a couple of cars. The button panel inside showed 7 buttons. G, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6. 7 buttons. 6 basement levels plus the ground floor. I used that elevator dozens of times during my first few weeks. I'd ride down to B1, do a quick sweep of the level, walk down the ramps to B2, B3, and so on. Each level was the same concrete pillars, flickering fluorescent lights, painted lines marking empty parking spaces. By the time you got to B6, the lights barely worked. Some sections were completely dark, but it was still just a parking garage. Still just concrete and asphalt, and the occasional abandoned shopping cart. The button appeared on my 5th week. I was doing my usual 2 a.m. patrol. I stepped into the elevator, pressed B1, and the doors closed. As the elevator started moving, I glanced at the button panel. There were 8 buttons now. G, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, and B7. I blinked. Stared at the panel. The B7 button looked old, like it had always been there. The number was slightly faded. The plastic around it yellowed with age, but it hadn't been there before. I was sure times it hadn't been there before. The elevator reached B1, and the doors opened. I stood there, staring at the button panel, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Just a maintenance button. I muttered to myself. Probably leads to a mechanical room or something. I did my sweep of B1, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. When I got back to the elevator to head to B2, I checked the panel again. 8 buttons. The B7 button was still there. I pressed it. I don't know why. Curiosity, stupidity, some compulsion I couldn't explain. The elevator lurched downward. The descent felt longer than it should have. The distance between levels in the garage was only about 10 feet. But we seemed to be dropping for at least 30 seconds. Finally, the elevator stopped. The doors opened. Level B7 looked like all the others. Concrete pillars, fluorescent lights, painted parking space lines. But something about it felt wrong. The air was colder. Much colder. I could see my breath. The lights were dimmer, and they flickered erratically, casting everything in stuttering shadows. And the space felt times bigger asterisk. The ceiling seemed higher. The pillars seemed farther apart. I stepped out of the elevator, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The level was completely empty. No cars, no shopping carts, no trash. Just pristine concrete, stretching out in every direction. I walked toward the nearest pillar. There was a sign painted on it. Asterisk. Asterisk B7. Section A. Asterisk. Asterisk. I pulled out my radio. Control, this is Jesse. I'm on parking level B7. Can you confirm this level exists in the building plans? Static. Control, do you copy? More static. Then, faintly, a voice my supervisor, Martin. Jesse, what are you talking about? There is no B7. I'm standing on it right now, I said. Jesse, the garage only has 6 levels. Are you sure you didn't hit B6 by mistake? I'm looking at a sign that says B7, I insisted. Silence on the other end. Then, get back in the elevator and come up. Now, I turned back toward where the elevator should be. It was gone. Not gone like the doors had closed. Gone like it had never been there. The wall was solid concrete. No elevator doors. No call button. Nothing. Control, I said, my voice rising. The elevator's not here. What do you mean it's not there? I mean it's time's gone asterisk. There's no elevator. I'm trapped down here. I could hear Martin talking to someone else, his voice muffled. Then he came back on the radio. Jesse, stay calm. We're sending someone down to get you. Find the stairs and start heading up. The stairs? Right. Every level of the garage had emergency stairwells at the corners. I found the nearest one, a metal door with a push bar, and a sign that read, Emergency Exit. I pushed it open. The stairwell was wrong. Instead of going up, the stairs went down, and down, and down. I shined my flashlight into the darkness below. The stairs descended farther than I could see, spiraling into a black void. That's not right, I whispered. I let the door close and tried the next stairwell. Same thing. Stairs going down. I tried all 4 stairwells on B7. All of them went down. I went back to where the elevator had been. The concrete wall was still there, solid and featureless. But now, there was something else. A car. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. But now, parked in the space nearest to where the elevator should be, was a car. A sedan. Dark blue. Covered in dust. I approached it slowly. The windows were dirty, but I could see inside. Empty. No one in the driver's seat. No one in the back. I tried the door. Unlocked. I opened the driver's side door and looked inside. The interior was pristine. Clean. Like the car had been parked here yesterday, except for the registration sticker on the windshield. 1997. This car had been here for almost 30 years. I checked the glove compartment. Insurance papers. Registration. The car belonged to someone named Michael Torres. The address was local. I backed away from the car and pulled out my radio. Control, I found a vehicle down here. Registration says it's been here since 1997. Can you run the name Michael Torres? Static. Control? Nothing. The radio was dead. I started walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't just stand there. I followed the painted lines on the floor, moving deeper into B7. The level seemed to go on forever. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes, and I never reached a wall. Never reached the end. Just pillars and parking spaces stretching out endlessly. And then I found another car, a pickup truck, covered in dust. The tires were flat. The windows were clouded with grime. The registration sticker said 1,989. I kept walking. More cars. Dozens of them. Scattered throughout the level. All old. All abandoned. Some from the 90 seconds. Some from the 80 seconds. One car, a rusted-out sedan, had a registration from 1,973. Who had driven these cars down here? Why were they all abandoned? And why the hell was this level so times big asterisk? I found the ramp. Not a stairwell. A ramp. The kind cars use to drive between levels. It curved downward, disappearing into darkness. A sign above it read, asterisk asterisk, B, 8, asterisk asterisk. No, I said out loud. No. That's not possible. But I could see it. The ramp leading down to another level. I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, to find another way out. But there was no other way. The stairs only went down. The elevator was gone. The level seemed infinite. The only way out was through. I descended the ramp to B8. If Bait had felt wrong, Bnjols felt malevolent. The temperature dropped even further. My breath came out in thick clouds. The lights barely worked. Most of them were dead, leaving vast sections in complete darkness. And the cars here, the cars were older, much older. I passed a station wagon from the 1,960 seconds, a sedan from the 50 seconds, a truck that looked like it was from the 1,940 seconds. How deep did this go? How far down had people been driving? I found a sign on one of the pillars, spray painted in red, asterisk asterisk, turn back asterisk asterisk. Someone had been down here before. Someone had tried to warn others. I should have listened. I kept going. B9 was worse. The cars here were from the early 1900s, Model Ts. Vintage automobiles with wooden wheels and brass fixtures. They were falling apart, rusting, disintegrating. The air smelled like decay, like earth and mold and something else. Something organic. I passed a car that had collapsed in on itself. The metal frame was corroded beyond recognition. And inside, still sitting in the driver's seat, was a skeleton. I ran. I don't know how long I ran. The levels blurred together. B10, B11, B12. Each one older than the last. Each one colder, darker, more oppressive. The cars on B12 weren't cars anymore. They were wagons, horse-drawn carriages, wooden carts with rusted metal wheels. I was descending through time's time asterisk. On B13, I found the horses, still hitched to their wagons. Skeletons held upright by dried leather harnesses. Their skulls stared at me with empty eye sockets. This isn't real, I kept saying. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was real. I was times there asterisk. I could feel the cold, smell the decay, see the bones. On B14, the vehicles were gone. No cars, no wagons, just indentations in the ground, like something had been parked there, but so long ago that even the vehicles had turned to dust. And on the pillars, I found markings, symbols carved into the concrete, not modern graffiti, ancient, primitive. How far down had I gone? How far back in time? I found the elevator on B15, not where it should have been, not where logic said it could be, but there it was, sitting in the middle of the level. An elevator shaft, freestanding, with doors that looked impossibly old. I pressed the call button. The doors opened. Inside, the button panel showed only one button. Asterisk, asterisk, G asterisk, asterisk. I stepped inside. The doors closed. The elevator rose. When the doors opened again, I was in the Tower B lobby. Ground floor. The security desk was there. Martin was there, looking concerned. Jesus, Jesse, where the hell have you been? You've been gone for 3 hours. 3 hours. I'd been down there for what felt like days. The parking garage, I said. Level B7. B8. I went down. There is no B7, Martin said firmly. The garage only has 6 levels. You must have gotten disoriented or something. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera roll. I'd taken pictures. Dozens of pictures of the cars, the skeletons, the symbols. The photos were gone. Every single one. I quit that night. I looked up Michael Torres a few weeks later. The man whose car I'd found on B7. He was reported missing in 1997. Last seen leaving work at the Hartwell Office Park. His car was never found. 43 people have gone missing from that office park since it was built. All of them were last seen in or near the parking garage. None of them were ever found. The Hartwell Office Park is still there. The garage is still open. 6 levels. B1 through B6. But if you ever take that elevator down and you see a button for B7, don't press it, because some levels don't just go down. They go times back asterisk. And once you start descending, you might not stop until there's nothing left but darkness. And symbols. And bones. Asterisk, depth, and time. 2 things we think we understand until we don't. That parking garage reminds us that some spaces are bigger on the inside than they should be. And some descents have no bottom. Our next story is shorter a quick breath before we dive back into the deep end. But don't let the brevity fool you. Sometimes the most terrifying moments are the ones that happen fast. Asterisk. This is going to be quick because I only saw it once, and I never went back to confirm what I saw. Some things you just know are real, even when your brain is screaming that they can't be. My name is Tasha. I'm 23. Last summer, I took a security job at Riverside High School while I was between semesters at college. The school had been closed for 2 years. Budget cuts, declining enrollment, the usual story. The district was trying to sell the property, so they needed someone to watch it overnight until a buyer came through. Easy money, I thought. Just walk around an empty school a few times a night. Make sure nobody broke in. What could go wrong? The school was typical. Built in the 72nds. That institutional brick architecture. 2 stories. About 40 classrooms, a gym, a cafeteria, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool in a separate building connected to the main school by a covered walkway. The pool building was my least favorite part of the patrol route. Indoor pools have a particular smell, right? That chlorine smell mixed with humidity and something vaguely chemical. Even empty pools have that smell. It gets into the walls, the ceiling tiles, the concrete. It lingers. But the Riverside pool had been drained 3 years earlier, before the school even closed. Maintenance issues something about the filtration system failing, and the cost to repair it being too high. So they drained it, and it had been empty ever since. That's what I was told during orientation. My first 2 weeks on the job, I avoided the pool building. I'd shine my flashlight through the windows of the covered walkway, see that everything looked secure, and move on. No need to actually go inside. The doors were locked. Nothing to check. But on my 3rd week, I noticed something. One of the windows in the pool building was fogged up. Not from the outside, from the inside. Like there was humidity in there. Like the air was warm and moist. That didn't make sense. The building had been closed for years. The heating was off. There shouldn't be any moisture. I told myself it was probably just a temperature difference. Cold night, warmer air inside. Condensation. Simple physics. But it bothered me. On Friday night of that week, I decided to actually check the pool building. I unlocked the door to the covered walkway, a long corridor with windows on both sides, open to the weather but covered by a metal roof. Rain was drumming on the roof. It was loud, almost deafening. At the far end was the entrance to the pool building. The doors were glass, and through them, I could see the dark interior and that fog. Thick fog, pressed against the glass like someone breathing on it. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Chlorine. Strong, fresh chlorine. The smell of an active, maintained pool. My skin went cold. I walked down the hallway toward the pool deck. The building was dark except for my flashlight beam. The walls were lined with old swim team photos and trophy cases. The doors to the locker rooms were closed. At the end of the hallway was the pool deck entrance, a set of double doors with wire-reinforced windows. Through the windows, I could see the pool, and it was full. Not just full. The water was pristine, clean. I could see the lane lines on the bottom, the starting blocks, the depth markers on the walls. Steam rose from the surface in lazy coils. The pool was heated. I pushed through the doors onto the pool deck. The humidity hit me like a wall. It was warm in there, maybe 75, 80 degrees. The chlorine smell was overwhelming. I walked to the edge of the pool and looked down. The water was crystal clear. I could see all the way to the bottom. 20 feet down at the deep end. The underwater lights weren't on, but my flashlight illuminated the blue tiles, the ladder, the drain covers. "What the fuck?" I whispered. This wasn't possible. The pool had been drained. I'd seen the work orders during orientation. The pool was empty. It had been empty for times 3 years. Asterisk. I knelt down and reached out to touch the water. It was warm. Bathwater warm. And that's when I saw the ripples. Not from my hand. I hadn't touched the water yet, but ripples were spreading across the surface, emanating from the far end of the pool near the diving board, like something had just gone under. I stood up quickly, my heart hammering. I shined my flashlight at the diving board end. The water was still now, flat. But I could have sworn I'd seen movement. A shadow. Something just beneath the surface. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the tile walls. "If someone's in here, you need to identify yourself. This is a restricted area." Nothing, just the sound of water gently lapping against the pool edges. Except the water shouldn't be lapping, there was no wind in here. No reason for it to move. I walked along the edge of the pool, my flashlight scanning the water. The deep end was darker, harder to see into. The shadows seemed thicker there, and then I saw it. At the bottom of the deep end, in the darkest corner, something was moving. Not floating, not drifting. Asterisk. Moving asterisk. Deliberately. It was hard to make out just a shape. Pale. About the size of a person. It was pressed against the bottom of the pool, near the drain. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds, my breath coming in short gasps, and then it started rising, slowly. So slowly. The shape ascending through the water, getting closer to the surface. I could see more details now. It times was times a person, or it had been. Pale skin, long hair floating around the head like seaweed, arms at its sides. It was maybe 10 feet from the surface when I ran. I didn't look back. I crashed through the double doors, sprinted down the hallway, burst out into the covered walkway. The rain was still pounding on the metal roof, and I could barely hear my own panicked breathing over the noise. I made it back to the main building and locked myself in the security office. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I pulled up the school records, found the maintenance logs for the pool building. The pool had been drained in August of 2019. Before that, there had been an incident. A student had drowned during after-school swim practice. A junior named Maya Rodriguez. She'd been found at the bottom of the pool, unconscious. They pulled her out and tried to revive her, but it was too late. The pool had been closed for investigation. then permanently closed, then drained. Maya Rodriguez had been on the swim team. She practiced every day after school. She'd been found in the deep end, near the drain. I looked up her photo in the old yearbook stored in the security office. Long dark hair, pale skin. I didn't go back to the pool building that night, or any night after. I finished my shift in the security office, doors locked, lights on, and when my replacement showed up at 6 a.m., I told him there was something wrong with the pool building, possible water damage, needed to be checked out. He said he'd take a look. I got a call from him around 8 a.m. after I'd gotten home. Hey, I checked the pool building like you said. Everything looks fine. Pool's empty, just like it should be. What? I said, the pool. It's empty, totally dry. I don't know what you thought you saw, but there's definitely no water damage. I quit that day. Told the district I had a family emergency and couldn't continue. They didn't push, but I've thought about it a lot since then. About what I saw. About the water that shouldn't have been there. About the shape rising from the deep end. Part of me wants to believe it was a hallucination. Stress, lack of sleep, my imagination running wild in an empty school. But I know what I felt. The humidity, the warmth of the water, the smell of chlorine. And I know what I saw. Riverside High School is still for sale. They've had a few security guards since I left. None of them last long. I heard one of them reported seeing water on the pool deck, wet footprints leading from the pool to the locker rooms. But when maintenance checked, everything was dry. I don't know if Maya Rodriguez is still there. If some part of her is trapped in that pool, swimming laps for eternity, unable to surface, unable to escape. I don't know if the pool fills itself at certain times. If the water is real or just a memory. If what I saw rising from the deep end was her ghost or something worse. But I know this. Some pools never really drain. Some water never really leaves. And some swimmers never stop practicing. If you ever work security at an abandoned school with a pool, and you smell chlorine where there shouldn't be any, don't go investigate. Don't check the water. And whatever you do, don't lean over the edge to look into the deep end, because something might be looking back, and it might be rising. Asterisk. Water holds memory. That's what they say. Every pool that's ever had a tragedy seems to remember it, seems to replay it when no one's watching. Maya Rodriguez never left that pool, and I don't think she ever will. Our next story is about something else that doesn't leave the absence of someone who should be there. When your partner disappears on a routine patrol, what do you find when you go looking? And more importantly, do you really want to know? Asterisk. Working security is usually a solitary job. You're alone with your thoughts, your flashlight, and whatever sounds old buildings make in the middle of the night. But some properties are too big for one person, so they assign partners, 2 guards, splitting the patrol routes, staying in radio contact. That's how I met David. My name is Chris. I'm 34, and I've worked security for almost a decade. Last fall, I took a job at the Crosswinds Mall, a massive shopping complex that had been hemorrhaging stores for years. By the time I started, maybe 20% of the retail spaces were still occupied. The rest was just empty. The overnight shift required 2 guards, me and David. He was older, maybe 55, with gray hair and a quiet demeanor. Former military. Didn't talk much, but when he did, it was always something practical, something useful. We worked Sunday through Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Our routine was simple. Meet in the security office at 10. Spend the first hour reviewing the day's notes and checking the camera systems. Then, split up for patrols. David would take the east wing and upper level. I'd take the west wing and lower level. We'd stay in radio contact the whole time, checking in every 15 minutes. It worked well. David was reliable, professional. In the 6 weeks we worked together, he never missed a check-in, never complained, never caused problems, until the night he disappeared. It was a Tuesday in November. Cold outside, getting close to Thanksgiving. The mall was dead. Even the few stores that were still open had barely any customers during the day. At night, it was a tomb. We started our shift as usual. David made coffee while I checked the cameras. Most of them were non-functional, but we had enough coverage to monitor the main entrances and a few key corridors. At 11:30, we split up for our first patrol. East wing and upper level, David said, clipping his radio to his belt. I'll check in at 11:45. Copy that, I said. West wing and lower level. See you in an hour. He nodded and headed out. I started my patrol on the west side. The stores there were mostly closed clothing retailers with dusty windows, a sporting goods store with empty shelves, a bookstore that had left all its fixtures behind. The whole wing felt like a museum of retail past. At 11:45, my radio crackled. Chris, this is David. Checking in. East wing. Second floor. All clear. Copy, David. West wing. First floor. All clear. Roger. Next check at midnight. Standard. Normal. Nothing unusual. At midnight, I checked in. David. This is Chris. Checking in. West wing. Still first floor. All clear. Silence. I waited 30 seconds, then tried again. David, do you copy? Static. I wasn't worried yet. Radio dead zones were common in the mall. The signal got blocked by metal structures, thick walls, the sheer size of the building. David had probably just walked into a dead zone. I continued my patrol, expecting him to check in once he was back in range. At 12:15, I called again. David, this is Chris. You missed your check-in. Please respond. Nothing. At 12:30, I was starting to worry. David, if you can hear me, please respond. I'm going to head to your last known location if I don't hear from you in 5 minutes. Silence. At 12:35, I abandoned my patrol route and headed to the east wing. The east wing was darker than the west. Fewer working lights, more empty storefronts. As I walked through the main corridor, my flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, I called out, David, you out here. My voice echoed off the empty stores. I reached the escalators to the second floor, frozen in place like everything else in the mall, and climbed them. The second floor was worse, almost completely dark. My flashlight was the only source of light besides the dim emergency exit signs. David, I shouted, where are you? Nothing. I checked my radio. The battery was full. The channel was set correctly, but David wasn't responding. I started searching methodically, moving from one end of the second floor to the other. I checked every store entrance, every bathroom, every service corridor. Nothing, no sign of him. But then I found his flashlight. It was lying in the middle of the corridor, near the entrance to the old Macy's. Still on. The beam pointed at the ceiling, creating a cone of light in the darkness. I picked it up. It was David's. I recognized the dent on the side from where he dropped it a few weeks ago. David! I called out louder now. My voice cracked with panic. David! Can you hear me? The silence pressed in around me. I tried his radio again. David, I found your flashlight. Where are you? Are you hurt? Static. Just static. I looked around, shining both flashlights into the darkness. The old Macy's entrance was right in front of me, a set of double doors with the glass panels papered over from the inside. The store had been gutted years ago, but the doors were still there, chained, shut, or at least they should have been chained shut. The chains were on the ground. The doors were slightly ajar. No, I muttered. No. David wouldn't have gone in there. We had strict instructions not to enter the anchor stores. They were structurally unsound, possibly hazardous. We were supposed to just check the exterior doors and move on. But his flashlight was right here, and the doors were open. I pushed the doors open wider and stepped inside. The Macy's was enormous. Even with both flashlights, I could barely see to the other end. The space was completely empty. No fixtures, no displays, nothing. Just a vast concrete floor, and support pillars stretching back into darkness. David? My voice sounded small in the cavernous space. I walked forward slowly, sweeping my flashlight beams across the floor, and then I saw the footprints. They were in the dust, fresh footprints. Boot treads. David's work boots. I'd seen them enough times to recognize the pattern. The footprints led deeper into the store. I followed them, my heart pounding. The tracks were clear, easy to follow. They walked straight into the store, weaving between pillars, heading toward what used to be the back section, and then they stopped. Just stopped. In the middle of the floor, surrounded by empty space. No doors nearby. No exits. Nothing. The footprints ended like David had just vanished mid-step. I spun around, shining my lights in every direction. David, where the fuck are you? Nothing. I looked at the ground where the footprints ended. There was something there. I knelt down to look closer. David's radio. It was sitting in the dust, right where the footprints stopped. The screen was cracked. The battery light was blinking red. I picked it up, pressed the talk button. David, if you can hear me, please respond. For a moment, nothing, just static. And then a voice, distant, garbled, barely audible through the static. Chris, don't stay. David, where are you? The voice came again, clearer this time, but wrong somehow. The cadence was off. The tone was strange. It's not safe. Get out. Where are you? I screamed into the radio. Static. Then, behind you. I spun around. Nothing. Just darkness and pillars and empty space. But I times felt something. A presence. Like someone was standing just outside the range of my flashlight, watching me. I backed away, keeping my lights pointed forward. David, if this is a joke, it's not funny. I'm not David. The voice came from the radio in my hand. David's radio. But it wasn't David's voice anymore. It was something else. Something that sounded like it was coming from very far away. Or very deep. Who are you? I whispered. The voice laughed. It was a horrible sound, wet, echoing, wrong. We've been waiting for someone to come back here. It's been so long since we had company. I ran. I dropped David's radio and I ran. Out of the Macy's, back through the doors, down the second floor corridor. My flashlights bounced wildly as I sprinted, the beams cutting through darkness, and I didn't stop until I reached the escalators. I flew down them, nearly tripping, and ran back to the security office. I locked the door, called 911, told them my partner was missing in the mall, that something was wrong, that I needed help. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the entire mall, brought dogs, checked every store, every corridor, every maintenance tunnel. They found nothing. No sign of David, no sign of struggle, nothing. His car was still in the parking lot. His jacket was still in the security office. His coffee mug was still on the desk, half full, but David was gone. The police treated it as a missing persons case. They investigated his background, talked to his family, checked his bank records. Everything pointed to a man who'd shown up for work like any other night and then simply vanished. I told them about the footprints, the radio, the voice. They went back to the Macy's. The chains on the doors were intact, locked. They had to cut them off to get inside. The footprints in the dust were still there, mine and David's, but they didn't end in the middle of the floor. They went all the way to the back wall, to a service door that led to a maintenance corridor. Looks like he went through here, one of the officers said. Maybe he was chasing someone. Maybe he fell in the maintenance area and got hurt. They searched the maintenance corridors. Nothing. David's radio was never found. I quit the next day. Told them I couldn't work there anymore. They understood. They'd already decided to close the mall for good. Too many problems, too few tenants, and now a missing security guard. Bad publicity. The mall shut down 2 weeks later. It's been sitting empty ever since. The property's in legal limbo, something about ownership disputes and unpaid taxes. But sometimes I drive past it late at night. And sometimes, I swear I can see lights moving on the second floor. In the east wing, near the old Macy's, flashlight beams, sweeping back and forth, like someone's doing patrols, like David's still there, still checking in, still walking his route. The police never found him. The case is still open. David's family held a memorial service 6 months ago. No body, no answers, just gone. But I know he didn't leave. I know he's still in there. And whatever took him, whatever was waiting in that empty Macy's, it's still in there too, waiting for the next guard, the next partner, the next person who walks just a little too far into the darkness and never comes back. If you ever work security with a partner and they miss a check-in, and you find their radio in an empty store with their footprints ending in the middle of nothing, don't pick up the radio. Don't listen to what it says. And don't go looking for answers, because some partners don't disappear. They're taken. And the things that take them are still hungry. Asterisk. That was David's story. Or rather, that was the story of what happened when David became something else. 8 stories down, and we're heading into the home stretch. We've walked through dead malls, descended impossible levels, and watched pools fill themselves with water that shouldn't exist. But we're not done yet. We still have more stories to tell before the sun comes up. So stay with me. Keep the lights off. And whatever you do, don't check on any unusual sounds you might be hearing. Because after these stories, you might not like what you find. Asterisk. There's a difference between a space being empty and a space being times vacant asterisk. Empty means nobody's there. Vacant means nobody's supposed to be there. The office on the 9th floor of the Caldwell building was never vacant. My name is Rebecca. I'm 29, and I worked overnight security at the Caldwell building for 4 months last year. It's a 16-story office tower downtown, built in the 1980 seconds. And like most office buildings these days, it was struggling. Maybe half the floors were leased. The rest sat dark and unused. Except for one office, Suite 904. I first noticed it during my second week. I was doing my 1 a.m. patrol, walking the 9th floor with my flashlight, checking doors like I did every night. Most of the offices were dark, just empty desks visible through the glass doors, computers unplugged, chairs pushed in. But Suite 904 had its lights on. Not all the lights, just the desk lamp. I could see it through the frosted glass door, a warm yellow glow, the kind that makes an office look occupied. Lived in. I tried the door. Locked. I pulled out my master key and unlocked it, pushing the door open slowly. Hello? Security. Anyone working late? No response. The office was small. One room, maybe 12 by 15 feet. A desk with a computer, a filing cabinet, a bookshelf with binders, a chair. The desk lamp was on, illuminating a leather desk pad and a cup of coffee. The coffee was still steaming. I stepped inside, my hand instinctively moving to my radio. Someone had been here. Recently. Within the last few minutes. But the office felt empty. That particular quality of emptiness that tells you nobody's home, nobody's watching. Just furniture and objects and the hum of a computer fan. I checked the bathroom, a tiny half bath in the corner. Empty. I checked behind the door, under the desk. Nobody. The computer screen was on, showing a login screen. The wallpaper was a generic corporate image mountains. Blue sky. The username field said, J. Morrison. I looked at the nameplate on the desk. Asterisk, asterisk. Jennifer Morrison. CPA. Asterisk, asterisk. I radioed down to the main security desk. Hey, Marcus, do we have anyone working late on 9? Suite 904? Negative, Marcus replied. Building's empty except for us. Why? Lights are on in 904. Coffee's fresh. Looks like someone just stepped out. Pause. That's Morrison's office. She hasn't worked there in 3 years. What do you mean? Jennifer Morrison was a tenant here until 2020, Marcus said. She moved out when COVID hit. Office should be empty. You sure someone's been in there? I looked at the steaming coffee. Yeah, I'm sure. Check the sign-in logs. Maybe maintenance was up there. I checked the sign-in logs when I got back to the security office. No maintenance scheduled for the 9th floor. No one had signed into the building after 7 p.m. except me and Marcus. I went back up to suite 904 an hour later. During my 2 a.m. patrol, the lights were off now. The door was locked. I'd locked it myself earlier. I unlocked it again and looked inside. The office was dark. The computer was off. The desk was clear. No coffee cup, no steam, nothing. I convinced myself I'd been mistaken. Maybe the coffee cup had been there for days, and I'd just noticed it. Maybe my eyes had been playing tricks on me with the steam. But 3 nights later, it happened again. Same time, 1 a.m. patrol. Suite 904's lights were on. I opened the door. Fresh coffee on the desk. Computer logged in this time, showing a spreadsheet. The chair was pulled out slightly, like someone had just gotten up. Hello? I called out. This is security. You need to sign in at the front desk if you're working late. Silence. I walked around the desk to look at the computer screen. The spreadsheet was filled with numbers, columns of figures, dates, calculations, tax returns. From the look of it, the dates were from 2019. I heard a sound behind me, the sound of a chair creaking, like someone had just sat down. I spun around. The chair was still empty, still pushed out slightly, but I'd times heard times it, clear as day, the leather creaking under weight. Who's there? I said, my voice shaking now. Nothing. I backed out of the office, keeping my eyes on that chair, half expecting to see someone materialize in it. When I reached the door, I stepped out into the hallway and closed it. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouette of the desk, the glow of the lamp, the chair, and then I saw another silhouette, a person, sitting at the desk. I opened the door immediately. The office was empty. No one in the chair, no one anywhere. But the chair had moved. It was pushed in now, tight against the desk, like someone had just gotten up and tucked it in. I locked the door and left. I didn't go back to suite 904 that night. The next morning, I looked up Jennifer Morrison online. It wasn't hard to find her. There were news articles. Jennifer Morrison, CPA, had died in April of 2020. She'd been found in her office, suite 904, on a Monday morning by the building maintenance staff. Natural causes. Heart attack. She'd been working late on a Sunday night, doing tax returns for clients. The deadline was approaching. She told her family she'd be home by midnight. She never made it home. The articles said she'd been dead for several hours when they found her, sitting at her desk, coffee still warm in the mug. I should have quit right then. I should have walked away and never gone back, but I didn't. I needed the job. And besides, I told myself, what was the harm? A ghost working late in her old office? That wasn't threatening. It was just sad. So I kept working. And I kept checking on suite 904. It became part of my routine. Every night, 1 a.m. patrol, I'd check suite 904. Sometimes the lights were on. Sometimes they weren't. When they were on, I'd open the door and look inside. Fresh coffee, computer running, spreadsheets open, the chair pulled out. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes I'd hear sounds. Keyboard typing, papers rustling, the chair creaking. But I never saw her. Never saw Jennifer Morrison. Until the night I stayed. It was a Friday in March, around 1:15 a.m. I just checked suite 904. Lights on, coffee present, computer running. And I was about to leave when I decided to wait, to see what would happen if I just stayed in the office. I sat down in the guest chair by the door and turned off my flashlight. The office was quiet. Just the hum of the computer and the soft glow of the desk lamp. I waited. At 1:23 a.m., I heard the typing. Soft. Rhythmic. Someone typing on a keyboard. I looked at the desk. The keyboard was moving. Keys depressing on their own. Letters appearing on the screen. The spreadsheet was being updated in real time. Numbers changing. Formulas calculating. The cursor moving across cells. "Jennifer?" I whispered. The typing stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just silence and the glow of the desk lamp. And then the chair moved. It rotated slowly, turning away from the desk to face me. I couldn't see anything in it. No person, no shape, just an empty chair, turning on its own. But I felt her looking at me. I felt eyes on me, examining me. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said quietly. I wanted to make sure you were okay." The chair rotated back to face the desk. The typing resumed. I sat there for another 5 minutes, watching the invisible hands typing, watching the spreadsheet fill with numbers. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the typing stopped. The computer went dark. The desk lamp turned off. The office was black, except for the dim light from the hallway. I turned on my flashlight and looked at the desk. The coffee cup was gone. The chair was pushed in. The computer screen was blank. I stood up and walked to the desk. There was a post-it note stuck to the monitor that hadn't been there before. In neat handwriting it said, "Asterisk. Asterisk. Thank you for checking. J. Asterisk. Asterisk." I never bothered Jennifer Morrison again. I still checked Suite 904 during my patrols. The lights would be on sometimes, off other times, but I didn't go inside. I didn't interrupt. She was just doing her job, working late, meeting deadlines. The fact that she'd been dead for 3 years didn't seem to matter. I left that job in June for something with better hours. But I still think about Jennifer Morrison sometimes. About that office on the 9th floor. About the coffee that was always fresh and the spreadsheets that were always being updated. The Caldwell building is still there. Suite 904 is still listed as vacant. But if you ever work security in an office building, and you find an office that's always occupied even though no one's supposed to be there, don't be afraid. Don't run away. Just let them work. Because some people love their jobs so much they couldn't leave. Some deadlines are eternal. And some accountants will keep filing taxes long after death. Jennifer Morrison is still there. Still at her desk. Still typing away on spreadsheets for clients who have long since moved on. And if you're quiet, if you're respectful, if you leave her coffee alone, she might just leave you a note saying thank you. Asterisk. Jennifer Morrison reminds us that not all hauntings are malevolent. Sometimes, the dead just want to finish what they started. Sometimes, they're just working late. We're almost through our journey tonight. Just a few more stories before dawn. And speaking of working late, our next story is about what happens when your workplace becomes a prison you can never leave. Asterisk. There are sounds that bypass your rational brain and go straight to your survival instincts. Fire alarms are engineered that way loud, piercing, impossible to ignore. They're designed to make you move, to make you evacuate, to override whatever you're doing and get out. But what happens when you can't get out? My name is James. I'm 32, and I worked overnight security at the Pemberton office complex for 2 months before I broke. Before the sound drove me to the edge of sanity, and I had to quit or lose my mind completely. The Pemberton was a sprawling office park, 4 buildings connected by sky bridges, built in the mid-92nd. By 2023, it was maybe 20% occupied. Most of it sat empty, dark, waiting for tenants that would never come. The buildings were 12 stories each. My job was to patrol all 4 buildings, checking doors, monitoring security systems, making sure everything stayed secure. Standard overnight security work. The fire alarm system was old, really old. The control panel in the main security office looked like it was from 1000. 995, a beige box with a tiny green screen and dozens of buttons labeled with codes I didn't understand. My supervisor, Tom, showed me the basics during training. If the alarm goes off, check this screen, he said, pointing to the display. It'll show you which zone triggered it. Usually it's a malfunction dust in a smoke detector. Dead battery. Something like that. Just make a note of it, and we'll have maintenance look at it in the morning. What if it's a real fire? I asked. Tom shrugged. Then you call 911 and evacuate. But in 2 years, we've never had a real fire. It's always malfunctions. The alarm went off for the first time on my third night. It was 2:47 a.m. I was in Building C, third floor, checking doors. And then, beep, 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 beep. That sound. That piercing, urgent, mechanical scream that makes your heart rate spike instantly. I grabbed my radio. Tom, this is James. Fire alarm just went off. I'm checking it now. I ran back to the security office in Building A. The control panel was flashing. The screen showed asterisk asterisk, Zone 23, Building D, Floor 8, asterisk asterisk, Building D, 8th floor. I checked the camera feeds for that area. Nothing. No smoke, no fire, just dark, empty offices. Probably a bad detector, Tom said over the radio. Reset it and make a note. I pressed the reset button on the panel. The alarm stopped. Silence. Beautiful. Blessed. Silence. I made a note in the logbook. Asterisk 2:47 a.m. Fire alarm, Zone 23. Building D. Floor 8. No smoke detected. System reset. Asterisk. The next night, it happened again. Same time. 2:47 a.m. Beep, 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 beep. I checked the panel. Asterisk asterisk. Zone 23. Building D. Floor 8 asterisk asterisk. Same zone. Same building. Same floor. I radioed Tom. It's the same detector as last night. Zone 23. Yeah, that one's been acting up. Maintenance will replace it tomorrow. Just reset it. I pressed reset. The alarm stopped. But the third night, something changed. 2:47 a.m. The alarm went off again. Beep, 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 beep. I went to the control panel, already reaching for the reset button, but the screen showed something different. Asterisk asterisk Zone 23. Building D. Floor 8. Heat detected asterisk asterisk. Heat detected. Not a malfunction. An actual heat signature. I pulled up the camera feed for Building D, 8th floor. The hallway cameras showed nothing unusual. Dark offices. Empty corridors. But something was triggering that heat detector. I grabbed my radio. Tom, Zone 23 is showing heat detection. Should I check it out? Yeah, go take a look. But be careful. If you see smoke or fire, get out and call 911 immediately. I took the elevator up to the 8th floor of Building D. The doors opened onto darkness. The emergency lights were on those dim red exit signs, but the main lights were off. I pulled out my flashlight and walked down the hallway toward Zone 23. According to the floor plan, that zone covered the northeast corner offices. The air felt normal, cool, no smoke, no burning smell. I reached the offices in Zone 23 and checked each one. All locked, all dark, all empty, no fire, no heat, nothing. I was about to radio back to Tom when I noticed something. The temperature. It was getting warmer. Not dramatically. Just warmer. Like someone had turned up the heat. The air felt stuffy. Close. I checked my flashlight beam. Was that shimmer? Like heat distortion? Tom, I said into my radio. I'm in Zone 23. No visible fire, but the temperature's rising. I think we might have an electrical issue. Static. Tom? More static. Then his voice, broken and distant. Get out now. The alarm got louder. Not just the normal beeping. It became a shriek. A continuous wail that made my ears hurt and my skull vibrate. And the heat was increasing. Fast. I could feel sweat breaking out on my forehead, my shirt sticking to my back. I ran toward the elevator. The hallway seemed longer than before. The doors farther away. My flashlight beam bounced as I ran, and I could see the air now definitely shimmering with heat, like I was looking through a mirage. I reached the elevator and slammed my hand on the call button. Nothing happened. The panel above the elevator doors was dark. No power. Fuck. I gasped. The stairs. I needed to take the stairs. I ran to the stairwell door, yanked it open, and stopped. The stairwell was full of smoke. Thick, black, acrid smoke. It poured out of the doorway like water, and I could feel the heat radiating from it. Real heat. Fire heat. I slammed the door shut and backed away. The alarm was deafening now. The heat was suffocating, and I was trapped on the 8th floor with fire in the stairwell and elevators that wouldn't work. I pulled out my phone to call 911. No signal. I checked my radio. Dead. The heat was becoming unbearable. I could barely breathe. The air tasted like smoke even though I couldn't see any in the hallway. I ran to one of the office windows. Locked. I used my flashlight to break the glass, and the window shattered into darkness. Not into the outside, into time's darkness asterisk. A void. Like breaking a window into empty space. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. There was no fire. I'd checked. The cameras showed nothing. But the heat was real. The alarm was real. The smoke in the stairwell was real. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The alarm cut off mid-shriek. The heat vanished. The air returned to normal, cool, conditioned, stale. I stood there in the dark hallway, gasping, covered in sweat. My phone buzzed. Signal restored. I checked it. 2:53 a.m. 6 minutes. I'd been on that floor for 6 minutes. My radio crackled. James? You there? What happened? You stopped responding. I tried to find words. The fire. The smoke. I couldn't. What fire? The cameras don't show anything. Zone 23 went offline for a few minutes, but it's back now. No heat detection. Nothing. I checked the stairwell door. Opened it slowly. The stairwell was clear. No smoke. No heat. Just concrete stairs leading down. I took the stairs down to the ground floor, got in my car, and drove home without clocking out. I called in sick the next day. And the day after that, on the 3rd day, I told Tom I quit. Look, I get it, Tom said. Building D is weird. You're not the first guard to have problems there. Problems? What kind of problems? Tom hesitated. The 8th floor. Zone 23. There was a fire there. Years ago. 2003. An electrical fire in one of the offices. It spread fast. The alarm went off. But one of the overnight guards got trapped up there. Smoke inhalation. By the time the fire department got him out, it was too late. Who was he? I asked quietly. Guy named David Simmons. He was 31. Been working security there for about 3 months. I felt cold. What time did it happen? The call came in at 2:47 a.m. I never went back to the Pemberton office complex. Last I heard, they're still looking for overnight security. They go through guards pretty regularly. Most of them quit after a few weeks. Always the same story, fire alarms on the 8th floor of Building D. Always Zone 23. Always at 2:47 a.m. The maintenance reports say the detectors are fine. No malfunctions, no issues. But the alarm keeps going off. And the guards keep experiencing the same thing I did. The heat. the smoke, the trapped feeling. They're experiencing what David Simmons experienced that night in 2003. The panic, the desperate search for escape, the realization that there's no way out. They're experiencing his death over and over, every night at 2:47 a.m. If you ever work security in an office building, and the fire alarm goes off at the same time every night in the same location, don't investigate. Don't go to that floor. And whatever you do, don't try to find the fire, because some fires never go out. Some alarms never stop ringing, and some guards are still trying to escape. 20 years later, still running, still trapped, still burning. Asterisk. Fire is one of our oldest fears. Primal, inescapable. And the idea of being trapped while it burns around you, that's a nightmare we all share. David Simmons is still running from that fire, still searching for a way out, and every guard who works that building gets to experience his final moments. We're getting close to the end now. Just a few more stories before the sun comes up. The next one, well, let's just say that some mysteries from childhood never really leave us. They just wait, patient, growing darker with time. Asterisk. Childhood memories have a way of becoming distorted over time. You remember the feeling more than the facts, the fear more than the reason. And sometimes, when you return to a place from your childhood, you realize the fear was justified all along. My name is Sophia. I'm 28 years old. And last year I took a security job at Lincoln Park Community Center, a recreation facility in my hometown. The same community center I'd gone to as a kid for summer camp and after-school programs. The same community center with the playground I'd been terrified of. The Lincoln Park Community Center was built in the 1982nd, a sprawling complex with a gym, a pool, classrooms, and a large outdoor playground. By 2023, it was showing its age. The programs were scaled back, mostly serving as a rental facility for birthday parties and community events. My job was simple: lock up after the last programs ended at 9 p.m., monitor the building overnight, unlock in the morning for the early staff. Typical overnight security work. The playground was in the back, surrounded by a chain link fence. Swings, slides, climbing structures, all of it old and rusted, but still technically functional. During the day, kids still played there. But at night, it was closed. Locked. I remembered being afraid of that playground as a child. I was maybe 6 or 7 in the after-school program. We'd play outside until it started getting dark, and I always hated being the last kid out there. Because when the sun started setting and the shadows got long, the playground felt time's wrong. Asterisk. The swings would move when there was no wind. The slide would creak like someone was going down it. And sometimes, and I know this sounds like a child's imagination, but sometimes, I'd hear voices, kids laughing, playing. Even when I was alone, my parents had dismissed it as an overactive imagination. The counselors said I was just nervous about the dark. By the time I was 8 or 9, I'd convinced myself they were right. But now, at 28, working overnight security at that same community center, I wasn't so sure. The first week was fine. I'd do my patrols, walking through the empty building, checking doors and windows. I'd see the playground through the back windows dark, still, empty. But in my second week, during my midnight patrol, I noticed something. The swings were moving, not violently, just swaying, gently, like someone had just gotten off them. There was no wind. The trees around the playground were still, but the swings were moving. I told myself it was residual momentum. Maybe they'd been moving earlier and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe one of the swings stopped. While I was watching it, it just stopped. Mid-swing. Went completely still. The other swing kept moving. I backed away from the window and continued my patrol. When I came back past that window 20 minutes later, both swings were still. The next night, it was the slide. I was doing my 1 a.m. patrol when I heard it. That distinctive sound, the times of plastic on metal. Someone sliding down. I looked out the window. Nothing on the slide. The playground was empty, but I'd heard it. Clear as day. On my 3rd week, I started seeing the shadows. Small shadows. Child-sized. Moving through the playground when I'd shine my flashlight out there. At first, I thought it was just my flashlight beam creating tricks of light. But the shadows moved times against times the light. They'd dart between the equipment climbing structure to swings to slide like kids playing tag. I started avoiding that side of the building during my patrols. I'd check the front doors, the gym, the pool area, the classrooms, but I wouldn't look out the back windows, wouldn't check on the playground, but I could still hear it. Laughter, faint, distant, coming from outside. Children's voices, high-pitched and excited. You're it. No fair. Catch me. On the night of my 4th week, I broke my own rule. I looked out the back window during my 2 a.m. patrol. The playground was full of children. Not real children. Not solid. They were translucent. Ghostly. Moving through the equipment. Playing. Running. Laughing. I could see right through them. Could see the fence behind them, the trees beyond. But they were there. Dozens of them. All different ages, some as young as 4 or 5, some as old as 12. All playing, all laughing, all dead. I stood there, frozen, watching them. They seemed happy, joyful. Nothing malevolent or threatening about them. Just kids, playing on a playground, like kids do. And then one of them looked at me, a little girl, maybe 7 years old, dark hair and pigtails, wearing a dress that looked like it was from the 1,960 seconds or 70 seconds. She was standing by the swings, and she was staring directly at the window. At me. She smiled, and then she waved. I stumbled backward, away from the window. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. When I looked back, the playground was empty again. Still. Dark. No children. No shadows. No laughter. I spent the rest of that shift in the security office with the door locked, trying not to think about what I'd seen. The next day, I did something I should have done weeks earlier. I researched the community center's history. Lincoln Park Community Center was built in 1983. Before that, the land had been home to the Lincoln Park Elementary School, which had operated from 1947 to 1981. The school had closed after a tragedy. In May of 1981, during afternoon recess, part of the playground equipment had collapsed. The old climbing structure, a wooden jungle gym, had rotted through and given way while kids were playing on it. 7 children died. 19 others were injured. The school was closed permanently. The playground equipment was removed. The building was demolished. They built the community center on the same land, put in a new playground, tried to create something positive from the tragedy, but the children who died there never left. I called the community center director and told her I'd seen something on the cameras. Asked if there had ever been reports of unusual activity near the playground. She was quiet for a long time. Then, we've had reports over the years. Security guards, cleaning staff, even some program instructors. People see things, hear things, especially at night. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have taken the job if we had? Fair point. Are they dangerous? I asked. Whatever they are. No, she said. They're just playing. That's all they've ever done. Play. They don't bother anyone who doesn't bother them. I kept working there for another 3 months. I got used to the sounds, the laughter, the voices, the swings moving. I'd see the shadows sometimes, the translucent figures playing. The little girl with pigtails would wave at me occasionally. I started waving back. They were harmless. Just children, trapped in an eternal recess, playing games that never end. But there was one night, my last night, as it turned out when something changed. It was April, a Tuesday. I was doing my midnight patrol when I heard a different sound from the playground. Not laughter, crying. A child crying. Desperate, frightened, sobbing. I looked out the window. The playground was empty except for one figure, the little girl with pigtails. She was sitting on one of the swings, not moving, her head in her hands. She was crying. Without thinking, I unlocked the back door and went outside. The April air was cold. The playground was dark. As I approached, the little girl looked up. Her face was streaked with tears, or what passed for tears in a ghost. Her eyes were wide and frightened. "What's wrong?" I asked softly. She pointed toward the old climbing structure, the new one they'd built when they made the community center. "He's coming back," she whispered. "The bad man. He's coming back." "What bad man?" "The one who broke the playground. The one who made us fall." My blood went cold. Someone sabotaged the equipment? In 1981? She nodded. "He comes back sometimes. Walks around. Looks at us. Smiles." "Is he here now?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. But soon. He comes when they're going to tear it down. When they're going to build something new." "How do you know they're going to tear it down?" "We always know," she said. "We can feel it. The land remembers." I didn't know what to say. I stood there, in the cold April night, talking to the ghost of a little girl who died before I was born. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "I'm sorry that happened to you." She looked at me with those wide, sad eyes. "Will you watch for him? Will you make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else?" Yes, I'll watch." She smiled. It was heartbreaking. "Thank you." And then she faded, just dissolved into the darkness like mist. I went back inside and immediately started searching. Property records, development plans, building permits. I found it. The community center had been sold. A developer had bought the land. They were going to demolish the entire complex and build luxury condos. Demolition was scheduled to begin in June. I also found something else. A news article from 1982. A maintenance worker at Lincoln Park Elementary had been questioned in connection with the playground collapse. There was evidence of deliberate damage to the support beams of the climbing structure. Saw marks, loosened bolts, but they could never prove it was him. He was never charged. His name was Thomas Garrett. He'd moved away after the school closed, and according to public records, he'd moved back to town in 2022. Bought a house about 2 miles from the community center. I quit the next week. Told them I'd found a better opportunity. They understood, but I filed a police report. Told them about the 1981 investigation, about Thomas Garrett being back in town, about the upcoming demolition. I don't know if they took it seriously. I don't know if they investigated. But I know this. The demolition of Lincoln Park Community Center was delayed, then delayed again, eventually canceled. The sale fell through. Something about permitting issues and environmental concerns. The community center is still there, still operating. The playground is still in the back, behind the chain link fence. And at night, if you listen carefully, you can still hear the children playing, laughing, running, swinging. Safe now, protected. I drive past sometimes, late at night, and I always look at the playground. Sometimes I see them, the translucent figures, the children who never grew up, and sometimes I see the little girl with pigtails on the swing. She waves at me. I wave back. Elevators are liminal spaces by definition. You're suspended between floors, between destinations, in a metal box that exists nowhere and everywhere at once. Most of the time, that's fine. The journey is brief. You press a button, the doors close, the doors open, and you're somewhere new. But what happens when the doors open and you're nowhere at all? My name is Marcus. I'm 35, and I worked overnight security at the Westbridge Towers for 5 months before I figured out what was happening. Before I understood where that elevator really went, the Westbridge Towers was a pair of connected high-rises, downtown residential on one side, commercial on the other. 24 stories each, built in the late 82nds. By 2023, the commercial tower was mostly empty. A few law firms on the lower floors, some accounting offices, but the upper floors had been vacant for years. The residential tower was maybe half occupied. A lot of retirees, some young professionals, a few families. My job was to patrol both towers overnight, monitor the security systems, respond to any issues. Standard high-rise security work. Each tower had 3 elevators. In the commercial tower, all 3 still worked, though they were slow and occasionally glitchy. The maintenance logs were full of repair orders, doors sticking, floor indicators malfunctioning, that kind of thing. Elevator 2 inches the commercial tower was the worst. The maintenance guys had nicknamed it the Wanderer because it had a habit of moving on its own. You'd be on the 5th floor, call an elevator, and elevator 2 would arrive from the 24th floor even though nobody had called it there. Or it would sit on the ground floor for hours, then suddenly go up to the 18th floor for no reason. It's the control system. The head maintenance guy, Frank, told me during my first week. The wiring's old. Signals get crossed. Don't worry about it. Just don't use elevator 2 if you can avoid it. Use 1 or 3. Good advice. I followed it for the first month, but in my second month, I started noticing a pattern. Elevator 2 would move on its own at the same time every night. 3:17 a.m., I'd be doing my rounds, monitoring the security panel, and I'd hear that distinctive ding of an elevator arriving. I'd check the panel. Elevator 2, moving. Sometimes going up, sometimes going down, but always starting its journey at exactly 3:17 a.m. Curiosity got the better of me. On a Tuesday night in November, at 3:15 a.m., I positioned myself in the lobby of the commercial tower, watching the elevator indicators. 3:17 a.m. came. Ding. Elevator 2's indicator lit up. It was on the 14th floor. As I watched, it began descending. 14, 13, 12, 11. It stopped at the ground floor. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. I stepped closer, looking inside. Standard elevator interior, mirrored walls, metal handrails, worn carpet, nothing unusual. The doors started to close. On impulse, I stepped inside. The panel showed buttons for floors G through 24. All the normal floors. I didn't press anything. I just waited to see what the elevator would do on its own. The doors closed. The elevator began to ascend. I watched the floor indicator above the doors. G, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It kept going. Past 14, where it had started. Past 20. Past 24. The indicator went dark. The elevator kept rising. I should have been panicking. I should have been pressing the emergency stop button, trying to pry open the doors. But I felt strangely calm, disconnected, like I was watching this happen to someone else. The elevator rose for what felt like minutes, longer than it should have taken to reach any floor in the building. And then it stopped. The floor indicator remained dark. No number. No letter. Nothing. The doors opened. I was looking at a hallway. A corridor that looked like it belonged in the Westbridge Towers. Same carpet, same wallpaper, same fluorescent lights. But something about it felt wrong. The lights were flickering. The wallpaper was faded, peeling in places. The carpet was worn, stained, and it was silent. Completely silent. No hum of HVAC, no distant traffic sounds, no ambient noise at all. Just nothing. I stepped out of the elevator. The hallway extended in both directions. Apartment doors lined both sides, numbered in the 2,400 seconds. 2,401, 2,402, 2,403. But the Westbridge Towers only had 24 floors. There was no 24th floor apartments. The commercial tower didn't even have apartments. I turned back to the elevator. The doors were still open, the cab sitting there waiting. This is insane, I muttered. I walked to the nearest door, 2401, and tried the handle. Locked. I moved to 2402. Also locked. 2403. Locked. Every door was locked. But I could see light coming from under some of them. And I could hear sounds. Faint sounds. TV static. Running water. A dog barking. Someone was in these apartments. Someone was living here. I walked down the hallway, trying doors, listening. The sounds got louder the farther I went. TVs, conversations, a baby crying, music playing, normal apartment sounds. Except none of the doors would open, and I couldn't see anyone. I reached the end of the hallway. There should have been a stairwell, a window, something. But there was just a wall, solid, no door, no exit. I turned around to head back to the elevator and stopped. The hallway was longer now. The elevator was farther away. Much farther away than it should have been. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. I started walking back toward the elevator. But with each step, it seemed to get farther away. The hallway was stretching, extending, growing longer. I broke into a run. The elevator was receding. The hallway was expanding. The apartment doors were multiplying. I passed 2,410, 2,420, 2,430. Numbers that shouldn't exist in a building that only had 24 floors. Stop! I shouted. Stop it. And suddenly, I was back at the elevator. The doors were still open. The cab was waiting. I threw myself inside and slammed my hand against the G button. The doors closed. The elevator began descending. I watched the floor indicator. It stayed dark for a long time. And then, finally, it lit up. 24, 23, 22, 21. Normal floors, real floors. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. I was back in the lobby of the commercial tower. The familiar, real lobby with the security desk and the revolving doors and the potted plants. I stumbled out of the elevator and collapsed into a chair, my heart hammering. The clock on the wall showed 3:24 a.m. 7 minutes. I'd been gone for 7 minutes, but it had felt like hours. I checked the security footage later. The camera in the elevator lobby showed me entering elevator 2 at 3:17 a.m. The doors closed. For 7 minutes, nothing happened. The elevator didn't move according to the indicator panel. It just sat there on the ground floor. And then, at 3:24 a.m., the doors opened and I stumbled out. But I knew what I'd experienced. The ascending elevator. The impossible floor. The hallway that stretched forever. I started researching the building's history, looking for anything that might explain what I'd seen. I found something in the archives of the city planning department. In 1989, there had been a proposal to add a 25th floor to the commercial tower, a penthouse level with luxury apartments. Construction had actually begun framing, some drywall, basic systems, but then the developer went bankrupt. The project was abandoned. The unfinished 25th floor was sealed off, deemed unsafe, and eventually removed from the building records. Officially, it didn't exist, but elevator Doze remembered. Elevator 2 still went there. I never rode elevator 2 again. And I made sure to stay away from the elevator lobby at 3:17 a.m. But sometimes, on my patrols, I'd hear it. That distinctive ding. The sound of elevator 2 arriving on a floor, its doors opening to emptiness. And I'd wonder, was anyone getting on? Was someone else discovering that impossible floor? That hallway that never ends? I left the Westbridge Towers in March. Got a job with better hours, better pay. But I still think about elevator 2. About that 25th floor that doesn't exist but somehow does. About the apartments with lights on and sounds coming from inside, but no one you can reach. The building is still there. The elevators still run. Elevator 2 is still... The Wanderer still moving on its own at 3:17 a.m. And somewhere, impossibly high above the 24th floor, that hallway is still there, still stretching, still extending, still waiting for the next person curious enough or foolish enough to step inside. If you ever work in a high-rise building and an elevator starts moving on its own at the same time every night, don't investigate, don't get inside. And whatever you do, don't get off at a floor that shouldn't exist, because some floors were never finished, some hallways have no end, and some elevators go places that don't appear on any floor plan, places where you can hear people living, breathing, existing, but you can never reach them. You can never find them. You can only walk forever, in hallways that stretch into infinity, asterisk, liminal spaces, places between places. Elevator 2 still makes its journey every night at 3:17 a.m., still rising to a floor that was never completed. And somewhere in that impossible space, that hallway continues to stretch forever. We're almost done now. The night is nearly over. Just one more story before dawn. And this one might be the most unsettling of all, because it's about something we all fear deep down. The idea that the place we think is safe, the place we go to every night, might not be safe at all. Asterisk,